city of Williston, Florida. And Lord, we bring to you our prayers that you will give us the wisdom to make the best decisions that we can, the will to look through the issues and to come to a. And I ask you tonight to watch out for our law enforcement and our first responders, Lord. Every day, they put their lives on the line for our city and for their fellow man. And Lord, I just ask you to be with them in their training as they move forward in their work and to keep a hedge of protection around them. I ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, item 1 is additions, deletions, or
I have a request from City Planner Laura Jones to move item O to the beginning, please, if possible.
okay, so let's move it. You want to move it before A or after A?
Before 8, please.
Does anybody object to that? Okay, all right. I cannot see Crystal from here, but I know she's here. Crystal, do you have something that needs to come off? Or we just gonna talk about it when we get there?
We can go ahead and take it off for right now, please.
What item number?
Didn't know it was on here. I thought it was already taken off. I thought it was already taken off, so.
It's already been taken.
Okay, thank you.
It's already been taken off. Sorry about that. Okay. With that, I think we're good. If that's the case, I would entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as revised.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as revised.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. At this time is your first opportunity as the public to speak to us about an item that is not on the agenda. If you have something at this time you'd like to speak to us about, please come to the podium.
Even though we have no microphone, speak loud.
Oh, that's okay, I got it.
Please state your name for the record and your city of residence.
Bill Munden, I have a home at 749 Southwest 4th Street.
Okay? Sir, carry on.
I think I was last in here about September, October, and since then I've been trying to get some information from your city manager or the office.
We're in here.
Yes,
In the council chamber.
yes.
Okay.
And shortly thereafter, I had a meeting with Mr. Pavard over there, and I believe the fire chief. Yeah, good to see you. And we discussed some things about the corner property I have. I was wanting to put a fence there, and they said I can't do that. And then you remember everything now. So I'm waiting for you to answer my email.
Well, I want to have answers. I think the biggest question that you had was whether or not you could split your one property into 4.
It's still about the corner property, though, at the corner of the
I
property.
think you got our answer from our meeting. You can also
That's, no, I want something in writing, sir. You deny me to put a fence, and you're just making this rule that I've seen no proof of whatsoever about in the city statutes or whatever it may be, or the state law or city law or from the fire chief showing me that that's some kind of law.
I'll be more than happy to let the fire chief and chief of police discuss whether or not you can block the road.
No, I'm not blocking the road. We've been down this road. Why won't you answer my email, sir? You promised me before Thanksgiving you were gonna be out of town. You would call me when you got back. I got all these emails. I can print them out and pass them out. Why? Why didn't you answer me? It's the same song and dance I've gotten every single time I brought this subject up.
So I'm gonna let him give his 5 minutes.
Okay, you have 5 minutes to speak.
How much I got left?
I didn't start it, so.
Okay, then I'll ask a question. Is anyone here gonna work with me or give me something on this? Because I've tried different people.
Do you have a survey of your property?
Oh, yeah, I had it, I turned it in, and Macmillan did it, and that was the first thing 3-4 years ago. You had to have a survey to get the fence.
I'm not familiar with you.
And if I agreed to, not put anything, okay, well, quite a few people know about it.
Mics are working. We just can't hear them in here.
The survey clearly shows, and if there's an issue to get the ambulance down there or whatever, I'm good with that, long as there's not another street in Williston that has this same problem. Because if there is, and you're willing to take a piece of my property to get the fire truck down, why don't they take anyone else's?
We're not taking your property, we're just not letting you put up a fence. That's the way I
You're
understand it.
driving over it. Yes, you grade it, you put lime rock across my property like it's the road, which the road that it's turning on was given as a right-of-way from my family.
Okay, so here's what I would suggest, since none of us are familiar with what you're talking about. If you will bring your survey, get on the agenda, talk to Miss Wright, put your item on the agenda, because tonight you only have 5 minutes because you're not on the agenda. So
Okay.
get on the agenda with Miss Wright, bring her a copy of your survey, and then we will get it on the agenda so we can look at it, so we
But
know
you
what we're
print the
talking
one that's
about.
on his email.
I don't get his emails, he gets his emails.
Well, he's a city manager, he should send it out. It's an issue I've asked and asked and asked about.
If you want us to consider it,
Yeah,
that's what
I
you need to
understand.
do.
I come here one
Totally
night,
up to
gave
you
my
whether you
name,
move forward or
number,
not.
to someone over here, it wasn't you, young lady, it was someone else, it was a clerk or whatever, wrote everything down.
It must have been somebody
Nothing.
subbing for her.
Nothing,
'cause
they
she's
got my
our clerk.
email, I paid my city bill, you got all my information from my power.
I need a survey. The survey is what shows us where the roads are, where the easements are, where all the things that go
Where does
across your
that
property.
get recorded at? Because someone told me I had to go to Bronson record, and they said, no. I went all the way over there with the survey, and said, I want this recorded. They said, we don't do that. I said, well, I turned it into the city, and they don't have one.
We don't keep surveys. If you want it to do something,
Where is it, so each time that you have to show, you have to bring a survey?
I can't make a decision on something I haven't seen. And I think if I ask
It's
these
been
people, they're gonna
seen.
tell me the
I
same
filled
thing.
out on the application for the fence. I
Okay.
even had it on there, copy of it, turned
So
it in.
you applied for a permit for a
Yes,
fence?
yes.
Okay, and they turned you
Long
down?
time ago,
And they turn you down?
3 times.
Okay. Well, if you want to send it up the line to us, I need the survey. I need a copy of the permit, if you will, if you have it.
I'm sorry if I'm so frustrated.
No,
but
you're good.
I keep trying this.
I understand.
And it's a
If you
song and
want us-
dance and it goes nowhere.
Well, that's your next recourse. It's totally up to you whether you do it or not, but that's what I'm telling you to do if you want us to look at it. Because we can't make a decision without looking at it. I mean,
Who
right,
needs to look at it? Who's the person? Please tell me who the person I can talk to.
I
and
just
I'm gonna
did.
bring all that.
I just
You?
did. You bring it to this clerk right here. She will give it to us. And we will consult people that we need to consult in the process. And then we'll come to some
I
conclusion.
really don't understand it. I'm sorry. I don't understand why I'm being, I know y'all are real busy. It's really
No,
growing.
what don't you
This
understand?
has
Do you
been
have
a
us?
long time.
You
I
said you
keep
have a
doing
survey.
this
Do you know where it is?
For years.
Do we have a
Years.
copy of his survey? We do? He turned it in when he turned in the permit? Is it enough to make a decision off of?
I can make a decision with
I don't want you to make a decision
I
at this
think
point. At this point,
She's
it's time
already
for us to
made
look
one
at
one
it.
time with me.
I mean, we will obviously consult you, the police chief and the fire chief, and the city
That's
manager.
been done too. I've had a meeting with them.
They haven't consulted with us. They've told you no. If you want us to consider it and bump it up the line,
Oh,
we need to look again.
oh.
That's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Well, that kind of makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. So if they have your survey already, are you willing to come back in 2 weeks?
Certainly.
Okay. So,
I've
no?
been waiting 2
Shaking
years.
heads.
What's not 2 weeks?
All right, yeah, wait 2 weeks and we'll put it on the agenda so we can discuss it for longer than 5 minutes, because the 5 minutes is pretty much up
Okay,
at
I'm
this
sure
point.
my 5 minutes is up.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you for
Yes,
your
sir.
time, all of you. Sorry if I've come off as rude. I don't mean
No,
to be.
no, no, that's okay.
I'm
Same
just,
here,
no,
same
it's
here,
not
just trying to
okay.
get the point across.
And all the things that you asked for, he's gonna submit to Latricia.
Well, he says, Laura says we have them. Laura says we have a survey, which I did not know, we had it already. But if he's done a fence permit, we should have the survey. So if we have the survey, and here's what we're gonna tell staff. If turns out we don't have what he needs, please contact him and get it for us. And then we can make some decision. That's all I know to do.
And then I'm gonna request, when you submit, can you also submit the reason for the denial as well?
Oh, that's
You mean Laura?
Whomever, I don't know, he said it was rejected 3 times, so.
Okay.
If it was rejected, it should be somewhere that was.
Did they give you something in writing, say it why it was rejected? That's what you're looking for, right? Okay. All right, so staff needs to make a staff report at the same time they give it to us. If you will, prepare a staff report. And if the fire chief and the police chief can add to that report, we would greatly appreciate it. I know you're not aware either. Okay, so see, the police chief says he's not seen it either. We have a new police chief.
Hi. Good to meet you.
So, all right. So was this your dad's property? Was this your dad's property?
It was, actually my grandfather's.
Your grandfather's property?
It was never really my dad's.
Okay.
He lived there for years and years, but, yes, in my name, I've
Okay,
been paying taxes.
good deal. All right, so we'll have it on our next agenda. That's 14 days from tonight. So not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that. Anybody know what date that is? January 16th, right back here at 6 o'clock. Thank you, sir. Anybody else for the public participation? I promise not to yell at you. I didn't mean for that to sound as bad as it did. Yes, ma'am, come on up. State your name for the record and your city of residence.
Good night.
Hi, I'm Beatrice Roberts, and I'm with the Martin Luther King Scholarship Foundation. And I'm over here to announce that we are having our event coming up on Saturday, January the 13th. It's a scholarship gala, and it's going to be at the Williston Middle High School at 6 p.m. And the donations are $30. We would love for all of you to come. We gave out $7,500 last year to students here in Williston. And we will be having the parade on Monday, January the 15th at noon. And it'll end up in the park. And I do have gala tickets if anybody want to buy one, or 2, or 3, or 4. We still got some. So if you would like to have some deserving student here in Williston, we really would appreciate it. If you don't want to come, you can buy one for someone else. And we do have our raffle tickets. They're only $2 a ticket. And the prizes are, it's a 44-inch TV and a $100 gas card and a gift basket. So they're only $2 each. So if anyone would like to, we're over in the other room if you would like to see one of us before you go.
Okay,
And I really would appreciate it.
thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Thank you all for your time. Yes, sir.
You said the parade is in the park?
No, it starts here and ends up out in the park.
Starts in the park.
No, it starts here,
Starts here.
here, and end up out at Cornelius
Cornelius
Park.
Williams, so not the other way around, but that way.
Right.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
What day did you say that was?
The parade is on Monday, but the scholarship is on Saturday, January the 13th, and the parade is Monday, January 15th. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, appreciate it. So he can hear us if we talk? Okay. Hopefully it's recording too, that's what we really wanted to do. So there's something wrong with the speaker. Hello, Miss
Hey,
Appling.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year to everyone.
Welcome. Happy New Year to
Happy New
you.
Year. I would just like, Jacqueline Appling, I would just like to stand to thank, as most of you know, we had to postpone our movie night in Cantu, work with everyone. It was a challenge. We kind of worked with Mr. Bavard and Latricia and a lot of others to make that decision. So in canceling it, we're meeting to decide if we will redo it probably in February, but we will let everyone know if we will reschedule it, because the community is looking forward to it. So I've had people ask me, when are we gonna do it? So I would like to thank everyone for your support and just working with us as we made that decision to cancel it on December 16th. So thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else for public participation at this time? I will remind you that there's another opportunity at the end of this meeting, if you have something at the end that you would like to add. All right. We will then move to the consent agenda, which consists of council meeting minutes of December 5th, 2023, which seems so very long ago. And I know we had one correction. I don't know whether that correction's been made here or not.
It's been made.
Okay, correction has been made. All right, I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda as it stands. Please.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as it stands.
A second.
Have a motion and second. Any further discussion from anyone? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move at this time to updates, and we'll start with the staff and the Mr. Brevard. Do you be first, please?
I'm good. I
You're
got some
all
things.
good?
I'm
Oh.
good. I got some things I got to cover, and
Okay,
I'll just hit them through
at
that.
a later date? I mean, at a
Well,
later-
at least through the agenda, that is. So.
Throughout the agenda,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Staff, get your hands back there. Chief Stegall.
Yes, ma'am. As you know, this last year during the budget process, we put in for a grant for a total air pack replacement for $260,000. Regrettably, I have to tell you, we did not receive that grant. But we did, through some pretty quick actions here at the end of this last year, Danny Wallace and myself were able to secure a $46,000 grant to replace some of the air packs. And that $46,000 grant is a non-match grant. We had to go ahead and apply for it before December 31st. That's why this is the first time you've heard about it. I just wanted to make you aware of it. We'll be going after it again in July. So if we got to piecemeal this thing, we will, but I'd like to reapply for the bigger grant later in the year.
Okay, do we need to officially accept the grant or at a later date?
At a later date will be fine.
At a later date, you'll let us know when that is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else?
Just to give you a heads up, the fire department ran 2,144 calls in 2023. We're up 140 from last year.
Wow.
Can I get that number again, Lamar, please?
2,144.
And you moved your office? You want to tell people that?
Yes,
Or
ma'am.
is everybody?
Currently, yeah, we moved the office from one end of the building to the other. So if you come down there, it's no longer in the little cramped area. It's in the great big area. So
Good move. All right, any other staff who have anything at this time? Anything on, Mr. Bloom, online? No? He'll let you know. All right, so council, do anybody on the council have anything at this time in the way of needing an update or a question regarding anything?
Madam President, I just have one announcement. Just a reminder that qualifying, if you're going to qualify to run for council, qualifying starts January 22nd noon through January 26th noon. That's just a friendly reminder.
And the packets are ready for pickup?
No, ma'am, the packets will be ready on January the 8th.
8th? Okay. All right, my question I have, it's not on the agenda tonight, so I guess I might as well ask it at this point, is when do we elect a new vice president? of our council.
That should have been on the agenda today, but I forgot about it.
Okay, so I'll just ask you to please put it on the next agenda.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that happens. Okay, anybody else got a question or an update? Mr. Cox?
Several months ago, I think over off of Second, over by the Christian school, there was a mobile home that had caught fire and it's gutted. Weeds have grown up on there. Nothing's around it that I could see to protect from kids going in there or something like that.
If you will. Let me ask first if you'll just stand right there. Mr. Carson, are you around the corner? Are you aware of this mobile home?
Yes, they had a death in the family, and they're
If you will, come toward a microphone so it can at least be recorded. Sorry.
the family had a death in the family, so they're gonna send some other members over after they get back from Alabama. So
Okay.
it was a firework fire.
A fireworks fire. Oh, my. Okay, yes, ma'am, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, then I was speaking about 424 Second Avenue, is that the property, there was a fire?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that the
I'm
same
not-
property you're talking about, Wayne,
Mobile home?
on Second Ave?
Mobile home?
Yes, but we applied for a my husband and I purchased it, we live right across the street. We applied for a permit to demolish it 2 months ago, it was demolished last weekend, there is no more mobile home.
Cool. Thank you.
Do we know?
Solved that one, didn't we?
I started to say, is that the same one? Does everybody know if that's the same location we're talking about?
I would have to look at the address.
That's a good move. Thank you. Saved us a lot of trouble there and great to expand your property. All right. Anything else at this time? Ms. Baloo?
Just before we go into our next meeting and we appoint a new member, because there are so many appointments going on, my office talked to the Florida Commission on Ethics regarding whether or not appointed members will need to fill out the Form 6. They will need to fill out the Form 6. I believe it'll be the Form 6F, which is a slightly reduced form because of the reduced nature of their service, but just to put that in everyone's minds, as you're thinking about who you want to appoint, they will need to fill out that form.
We don't have anyone, unfortunately, that has been filled out a form. No one has filled out an application yet.
Right. So as we're considering these things.
Have we advertised for the position?
I advertised it that
I
day
know we
after.
talked about it. And then I was out of town, so I wasn't sure.
It was advertised for 2.5 weeks. Ending date was December the 26th, and it was in the December 26th in order for me to put it on tonight's agenda.
Right.
But I didn't receive anything from anyone.
Oh, my heavens. It's not a good sign. I guess, is it on our Facebook page?
No, I can put it on
Let's put it on the Facebook page. Set a new deadline, whatever your next agenda deadline is. That's all I know to do. It's bad.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Carry on.
If, they do have to fill out Form 6, is the deadline changed? Since they're appointed, they don't have to fill it out by the 22nd, correct?
Correct. It'll be by July.
By July.
July 1st.
So everybody that wants to be on the council, you get a reprieve.
Correct.
Okay, so if they want to be, if they fill out the form to be appointed for the 4-month period, they do not have to complete Form
That's not
Si-
F was a
Form
final
6.
left.
Until,
Right. The Form 6 final will be when they leave, because this is just an appointed position just for the remainder of this.
even though it's an appointment for an elected position?
Correct.
How
Yeah,
interesting
it's
is
an
that?
appointment for an elected position, and so they'll fill out the Form 6F because their service will end.
So they do have to fill out Form 6,
Yes,
but not till July.
correct. July 1.
But they have to do Form 6F to get appointed.
I
No.
don't, not to get appointed, just by July 1st.
Yeah, otherwise they start getting fined.
Correct.
How confusing is that?
As clear as mud.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody up there knows what they're doing. Love our state legislators. Okay. Then we will, I guess, hard to put it on the agenda if we don't have an application. But we do need to elect a vice president. So I guess we'll try to get them both on there. If y'all know anybody who wants to be appointed to a city council seat, we have one available. As you see, this chair is empty. But Form 6 is a nightmare. So if you don't know what we're talking about, we say Form 6, please ask. We'd be glad to tell you about it.
Yeah, ask the clerk, she'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, she's been to a lot of classes, and we've only been to one or two. Anything else from the, do I see a hand? Mr. Hardison.
Hello, my name is Jeff Hardison. I'm a journalist. And on hardisoninc.com, on the Life page, you can read about the 10 people in the 8 municipalities who have left. One did not leave because of Form 6. And then what you can also see in that story is a link. You can click on it. It's to the Florida League of Cities. They've got everything that you want to know. It's not that difficult.
Oh, yes, it is. The hardest thing for me, the very first question is, what is your net worth? And I have no clue what my net worth is. I've never had to do it.
I asked my wife, she said I was worthless.
So that's the very first question on the form. And I may have to get a CPA to figure that out. So after that, I think it's not bad. But the first question's got me stumped there. So there you go. All right, so I guess we're moving on. Do you have anything for this update?
I do.
Yes.
It's real brief.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to inform all the council that I will be going to the Martin Luther King Memorial and just entering a brief greeting from the city of Williston to the memorial.
You mean the gala?
I do.
Oh.
It's Martin Luther King Memorial Gala.
Yeah.
So I just, because I'm representing the city, I wanted you to know it's just a brief greeting, but I intend to do it. Thank you.
I usually go too. A lot of us go.
Well, you
We had a
all
whole
welcome to
table
go.
full.
I was asked
We had
to
a
do
whole
a brief
table full
greeting.
last year. You got tickets? Good. Are you just telling me you're going? Or you have something? Chief Rolls. You almost lost your spot there.
I will make it quick, but I wanted to put this out to the community and thank Jeff Hardison for writing the article. One of our officers made a traffic stop here in Williston, and it upset me a little bit because this individual was transporting a large amount of drugs through our city. 69.6 grams of fentanyl. For y'all who know about fentanyl, that is a lot of fentanyl. 44.3 grams of cocaine, 2.6 grams of methamphetamines, and 141.3 grams of marijuana. I'm glad to say he is in the Levy County Sheriff Office Hotel. I think he does have a bond hearing tomorrow. His bond is currently set at over $1 million right now.
1.8 or something. It was really big.
So I just want to put that out there to the community so y'all know that the things that the officers are out there doing, facing, and the things they're doing to safeguard our community and the people from these dangerous drugs. So it hits home when you hear about it and it's in your city. I mean, you hear about it everywhere else, but when you actually find that much fentanyl in little old Williston, that's when it really hits home. So I just wanted to put that out to the community. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. Anyone else under updates for this time period? Okay, we're going to move then to item number 5, which is new business, and we're going to start with O. And O is discussion with possible action, city-owned property surplus parcel 05777-00000. Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. I was
And you're
approached.
going to have to speak up so I can hear you.
Thank you, Madam President. I was approached by a company that has purchased some property on a block that's just south of the ball fields. If you just want to go down, Ms. City Clerk, you can see the map. I did it a couple different ways so that you could see exactly where this little corner is. So that's the ball field, and the corner that's highlighted in blue is the property that we're talking about. The property directly to the east is also city-owned property next to the train tracks. Does everybody know where we are? So this company has purchased some properties surrounding this block. This little block is owned by the city of Williston. It's vacant. I have discussed with our engineers, our city manager, and our city utilities whether we need this little block, whether this lot is important for us to keep in the future, and they have no future plans for it. On the directly to the east, that thing that starts to be a triangle underneath the peanuts, that's all ours. So if we had anything that we needed to put a lift station or another pond, that would be more adequate than this tiny little lot. So to make this property work for this company, they've asked if they could buy it, and I explained to them that they can't just buy it. We have to surplus it, and they have to win the bid. And they asked if we could start that process.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Jones? Yes, sir.
Ms. Jones, do they own property adjacent to this?
So at this point, they own property just to the south, and they're looking at property just to the west. So they would own that whole little L, and they would be putting up some new residences and possibly renovating residences that are there if possible.
Somebody use the cursor to show me the L, because I can't pull it out.
So Latricia, you see the 4 lots with the
They
yellow
own-
lines?
Yeah, one.
South. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then we own the 4th one that's highlighted.
Okay.
And then also over 1 and 2, yeah, you're doing it right. That's the L. And then
That
go,
makes
yeah.
sense. Thank you.
Yeah, the way it is right now, those 3 lots are kind of impeding doing another residence because it's kind of just the square footage just isn't really adding up. So that would really be an improvement for them.
So how did we come to own that piece of land?
That's a good question. We tried to look into it, and none of us could figure it out.
I never knew we owned it. I knew we owned the big triangle next to the railroad track,
Yes.
but I had no clue about the corner across the block.
Are you sure we own it?
Yes, we do own it, and Donald says it's probably was a code enforcement burned down house.
Foreclosure, that's all I could think
Yeah.
of. It must have been a foreclosure.
A tree fell on a house. You can tell him.
And I know
Oh, tree fell down on a house, and we
in
had
the
to take
past,
it.
we've talked, and this is pie in the sky, of course, but we've talked about that if we could get a distribution center of any kind on the airport area, that we've talked about putting a railroad spur to that area, because it's not really that far. It's a pretty straight shot. And we own the land already, but that's been years ago since we've talked about that. And it was the triangle, not that lot.
Right.
So if staff doesn't see a reason, I really don't
It's so small.
either. Yeah.
I mean, from what I recall, it's 0.14 acres or something like that.
Right, so it's
Yeah.
like an eighth of an acre or something like that. All right, so are you going to bring it back to us in the form of a resolution? I guess that would be my question.
Yes.
Okay, because it's not in the form of a resolution.
Yeah, if we can, if it's okay and we can proceed, we'll bring it back as a resolution.
Everybody okay with that? Consensus? All right, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. All right, now we're moving back to item A. So we're scrolling back up our agenda here. And at this time, it is presentation and discussion with possible action. Wilson Animal Group, Ms. Carroll, you have the podium.
First of all, I want to thank you for hearing us and our proposal, and I want to introduce I'm Carol Chebanoff, the president of WAG. Cherie Jenkins is our vice president. Teresa is our treasurer, and Kristen is our secretary, and Joni is a board member, and then we've got some volunteers here as well. And Teresa's going to do the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you so much for entertaining us. So what we are proposing is a partnership between the City of Williston and Williston Animal Group, really extending the existing partnership that already exists. So we really want to just renew that. We have a partnership currently. We are a contractor for the City of Williston to serve as a facility to hold dogs that are in need of temporary placement until they can be placed in permanent homes. So at this time, we take dogs for the City of Williston as needed. Obviously, that's changed a little bit with the opening of the Williston shelter. So we haven't had to do it as much, but we still have a contract with the city to serve as a contractor. So we want to propose that we combine the operations. Latricia, if you can go to the next one. Thank you so much. Combine the operations of WAG and the Williston City Animal Rescue. So basically take that, the Williston City Animal Rescue, and fold that into the agreement that we currently have with you with the WAG portion. The two properties are adjacent. So what we're suggesting is that we renew that partnership and continue a lot of the aspects of the existing agreement, but extend it to include that facility as well. If you can move forward. So really, there are several benefits to the City of Williston. WAG will assume the operations of the facility, which means you all wouldn't be required to pay for dog food and all of the supplies that are used for taking care of the dogs. We would fund that through WAG, through our nonprofit program. We would continue to take dogs from the City of Williston as needed, as we've done in the past, and that we assume all the liabilities for those operations. So the City of Williston would no longer have a liability associated with taking in dogs and holding them and then adopting them out. As we know, there's certainly liabilities associated with that. You obviously would be able to save on staffing expenses because you would no longer need paid staff in that facility. We would take care of that with our volunteer corps. We have a great group of volunteers that staffs WAG currently, and we are assisting right now in the facility as well. And then we would also start a TNR program to target the stray cat population in the City of Williston. We know that that's a problem here in the city. We want to partner with other organizations to do a trap neuter release program so that the cats in the community can get neutered and spayed and not be reproducing at the numbers they are currently. So we would help fund and put that program in place within 1 year of any agreement that we make with you. So, you know, we're decreasing the liability to the City of Williston, we're saving money on staffing, and we're helping out with the TNR program. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you, Ms. Wright. So the benefits to WAG is that the City of Williston would continue to waive the lease payments and extend it to the UCAR property. So our agreement right now is we have a lease for the property that we're currently located on, and the lease payments were waived because we're contracted to take care of any dogs that need to be taken out of the City of Williston. So we're suggesting that that could be continued and move it so that it covers both properties instead of just one. We would ask that it be extended for 20 years, which was what the original lease was, and it's up in 2 years. So we're suggesting that we start a new lease to cover both properties. We ask for 20 years because there are capital improvements that we would like to be able to make to the property. And so for us to put in additional dollars, we'd want to know that it's going to be ours for a long period of time. So for example, our existing buildings, we want to add heat and AC to those buildings. We would need to be able to know that that building is going to be ours longer than 2 years in order to make those investments in that facility. So we're requesting that. We're asking that the City of Williston convert the WAG property to city power grid, which originally was discussed 20 years ago or 18 years ago when the first agreement was signed. And there's part of the agreement is that they waive power, sewer, and water utilities at both at the WAG facility. So we're asking to have that extended to the other facility as well. And then WAG would remain an independent 501c3 group. And the reason for that is we have the ability to take additional animals outside of the City of Williston, because the reality is the facility there is larger than what's really needed to take care of the animals that are here in the City of Williston. There are not that many dogs taken in the City of Williston, but we can help in the surrounding communities. which impacts the city of Williston, because we all know folks who live in Levy County spend their money in the city, but they need support as well in the rest of Levy County. So we want to be able to help, not just in Levy County, but other communities as well. If you can move forward, Ms. Wright, thank you. And then, of course, we want to make sure there's a benefit to the community. So we will continue our efforts to decrease pet overpopulation in our area. We are really motivated at attacking the source of the problem. Right now, we're kind of all just chasing the problem, and we're just trying to, take care of as many animals as we possibly can. But we want to try to address the root of the problem, which is overpopulation. So we have some programs we want to start to implement to really push spaying and neutering pets so that we don't continue to have unwanted puppies and kittens being born in the community. We'll establish the TNR program for cats. That is the most effective way to decrease your stray cat population in any area. And then we're really working to bring low cost or no cost spay and neuter programs to the city of Williston. So that's really how we want to attack the source of the problem. And then also low cost and no cost vaccination programs. We know there's a lot of folks in the community. It's very expensive to take care of a pet, and we want to do what we can to help the animals stay in homes where they love them, but maybe financially are struggling. We already have a part of our organization that does that. It's called WAG Gives Back. We have a food donor program, so people can come to us and get free pet food. We also have been spaying and neutering quite a few animals last year, and getting vaccinations taken care of for families in need. So we're already doing some of that, but we will expand upon that. All right, and then I think that's just the last side. Lots of cute dog pictures if you're interested. And then there are some additional items on the handout that was given to you, just to just to kind of go through some details, but all of the details are negotiable. I mean, we're not saying we want, we just want to kind of tell you what our wish list is, and then we can work from there to come up with an agreement that works for both the city and WAG. So our goal is just to keep saving these animals from euthanasia when it's not necessary. So, that's all I have.
Okay. I'll ask council members if they have comments or questions they'd like to ask. Mr. Mayor, go first.
When you call WAG, currently, it says dog only. You're proposing in here to broaden that to cats as well.
So we wouldn't necessarily want to take cats into the shelter facility. We want to do the TNR program to reduce the stray cat population, and then partner with other cat rescues. So we're not really equipped currently to handle cats, but Sheltering Hands, which is in Ocala, they've partnered with us on several things. Vocal, which is located in Ocala. So our plan would be to partner with those rescues to move the cats into there. The reality is they have much broader reach as far as getting those cats into homes than we currently have. We have a great reach with dogs, but people don't come to us necessarily looking for cats.
So what your proposal is outside the shelter TNR.
Correct.
And you are both aware that the shelter was built specifically with a separate air conditioning system so that it could house cats.
For sure. The numbers that you could hold in that particular room safely are somewhat limited.
Yes.
And so it's not to say we couldn't hold them temporarily, in an immediate need. The plan would be if an immediate need, hold the cats. But our goal would be to get them to rescues that are better equipped to handle those cats.
So you would take cats into that facility?
Yeah, temporarily. Yep. And then move them to other rescues.
Eventually.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just to add to that, I would want you to do cats and dogs.
Okay.
Yes.
And if, no matter how temporarily, that's fine. If the need is there, we were, and I believe I don't know if you are aware, but we have a letter from Mr. Eccles, who funded our shelter almost completely, other than the donations that the city added themselves, and a few dollars from the community as well. And he is in support. I don't know if you are aware of that, but he has given a letter. I don't know who solicited the letter, but we're happy to have it. because he definitely crossed my mind when we started talking about this, as to how he would feel about it. So I was thrilled to get that this afternoon. So whoever asked for that or told him about it, I'm happy that he was able to give that to us. But he did want us to do cats and dogs. So I think it's important to continue with the cats, even if it's only temporarily until you can. And I love Sheltering Hands. I myself have trapped, neutered, released over 30 cats in my neighborhood with Sheltering Hands. So they are wonderful partners to have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yes,
that's the
ma'am.
goal, is to really create a network of partnerships. So we're pretty well connected with the Humane Societies in Ocala.
Right. That's great.
With, lots of different, and there's a bunch of them. But, we've got a network now that's
Right.
working really, really well.
Yeah.
So we feel like we have those opportunities. That's why we also, the TNR program, we have partners that would give us the funding for that. So it's not all inherent on us to raise all of the funds, because we have partners that are already doing those things. And frankly, they've done them, so they can teach us how to do it, so that we're not starting from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Tricia, if you could move, I keep talking in this thing like it's working, and I know it's not. If you can move to page 11 of the packet, just so we'll have that before us. And I'll ask if anybody else has any questions. I know I have a few, but I'm asking if anybody else has any at this time. Anybody?
So
I-
I have a few. Go ahead, Mr. Cox.
I would like to see forest cats, because we had captured during a hurricane a kitten and could not get a hold of anybody, so we had no place to take it. And then when we got a hold of the Humane Society in Bronson, they said they don't take animals because we're in the city of Williston and we have a program. And I said, but I pay taxes for you to be there. So I would like to be able to do that.
Yeah, and in that's a situation where we would take that cat, right? And we're gonna do, if it's now that's a found cat, so it needs to be held temporarily to see if an owner claims it. And then after that hold is passed, so that hold needs to be under the animal control officer of the city of Williston, because that's legally, that's how it needs to be done. Once that hold is up, that animal can be turned over to WAG. WAG would then look for a placement for that cat. So we would contact Sheltering Hands or Vocal or any of the other rescues, Puppy Hill, one of them, to try to see if there's a placement available. Now, if not, we can certainly hold them at the facility until we can find a placement. But we also have a network of foster homes, and so some of our foster homes would also be willing to take cats as well. So we have options, and we definitely will work through situations like that. I guess our intention is not, to hold 50 cats at the facility.
Yeah.
The facility is not designed for that.
No, and you're right.
but yeah.
The cat room doesn't hold 8 to 10 max, maybe not even that many, 6 to 8.
Yeah.
But I would want it to continue to be there.
Okay, yeah. And there are some concerns, because there's a lot of airborne illnesses with cats
Yep.
that are not the same with dogs.
That's why
and
they
so
have a
it's
separate
that's-
system that
yeah. So
the mayor was
that's-
talking about.
That's one of the concerns.
Right.
Is that particular issue.
It shouldn't be a concern if you take them straight there because they have separate air handler.
Right, but if one is infected in that room.
Oh, yeah.
Now
You mean the rest
everybody's
of 'em.
infected.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And that's
Gotcha.
the biggest
There is
concern.
an isolation room
Yeah.
in there.
In there as well.
Yeah,
That
one.
can
one
isolate a sick cat from the other cat, so it's not
Or an unknown cat from the rest of them.
Yeah.
what you
Sure.
tell me what
No,
I
go
want.
ahead.
I just wanted to put it on the record because it was given to me. The organization, a nonprofit that Mr. Echoes worked with to build the shelter for the city, has money left over. And they have indicated to me that they would like to use that money for the veterinarian area of the shelter so that they could move in with spay neuter program within the confines of that building. And they're just waiting for all this to settle down before they do it. But I have been given the intent that that is their plan, and it's roughly $17,000.
Okay.
And our intent, if we can get the funds, because it will be costly, is to put in a surgical center in the building. And that surgical center would be specifically for spay and neuter.
Right.
And our intention is to proactively approach people and say, please let me spay and neuter your dog or your cat. You know, the cats would be through the TNR program. But definitely proactively approaching those folks, bringing those animals in to get them spayed or neutered. The reality is, I don't know if anyone saw it, but Vocal had a grant to get pit bulls spayed and neutered. It was free of charge to the individuals who signed up. They had quite a few individuals sign up. Over half of them did not show up for their appointment. So the reality is, in some cases, you have to go get the dog, bring it to the facility, fix it. Our intention would be to hold it to make sure it heals properly, and then return it to the owner, so that it's done and they didn't have to do anything. That's the hope. That's the dream. One of our many, many dreams. We have big plans.
I saw the city manager next.
Yes. Yeah, just a few. Thank you, Madam President. So the couple of things that I have is that obviously we got this presentation, I think it was sent to us sometime actually the 27th of December. And so we've had very little time, although Carol and I have had some discussions about this, we've had very little time to actually dissect some of the requests that they're wanting, like obviously the power. We can't do that. It's not our power. It's for electric. So there's a lot that needs to be worked on, and I'm glad you clarified these are a wish list of things you'd like to have. And we most certainly would never want to remove WAG from their current lease. I didn't even know it even expired. It expires?
In 2 years.
That's news to me. So, you know, normally they're 50 years, 100 years, or whatever they are.
Does it have terms of renewal?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll have to take.
That's what we would want to do right there.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that anyway.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that. So I think the biggest question that I have is that whether or not we would be willing to lease a building to them for 20 years.
No.
And so it gets back into, and I'm just going to be honest here, is that, you know, I have to make sure that we posture ourselves, and at least the next city manager, whoever that may very well be, that I leave them in a position where, not in some of the positions that I've been left in. And so in this particular case, you know, we have a duty to fulfill an obligation to the taxpayers of the city of Williston. I think it's a lovely job what they do out there. I went out there today. It was clean. Everything was put up. I led no believe I saw the dogs. They saw the cats. You know, but if something was to happen, I have to have a shelter. I have to have some place. The city has to have some place to do their business. You know, when we have to take a dog or a cat or do whatever we got to do. So when it comes to a lease, you know, I would say we would work on more of an MOU with an understanding of what this will look like. And there probably needs to be a lot fleshed out here. I know the city attorney's been writing since we started talking. And it's not their fault, it's not our fault, it's just that this thing came together so quickly, and we really haven't had time to sit down and really talk about it and what it will look like. I'm in favor of the partnership, absolutely. Completely impressed with what WAG does. You know, I'm not going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go out there and feed dogs. They do it every day. Every day they're out there doing it. So their commitment to it absolutely goes without question. But we do need to work on some of this. And the direction I was looking for is maybe to direct staff back with WAG to sit down, hammer out what this MOU will look like, or we can do it with the city attorney. We can come up with a MOU of what it would look like. I think that probably they need to get it back to their board members, have them take a look at it, see what it looks like. And then if their board members are in agreement and we're all in agreement, then maybe we'll come back to you with a finished document of what it would look like. And y'all can kind of go from there.
As someone that tests acronyms, what is an MOU?
Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So,
I can understand words.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a memorandum of understanding of what that partnership would look like.
Yeah.
And it gives you outs. I mean, I was trying to figure out when they were talking what the capital improvement projects would look like on a brand new building, but now that you mentioned surgery center, then obviously I see that they're talking about
And they're talking about their own building.
Well,
No, they're talking about,
I mean, both. We also, like, so for example, if you go to the WAG facility, there's big paddock yards where our dogs
Right.
get to go out and play twice a day, pretty much every day. That doesn't exist on the other facility. There's really not a lot of area for the animals to go out and play on the grass. So that would be a capital improvement we would like to do on that property, is add those fenced paddock spaces. And those fences do require, you know, hot wire so the dogs can't jump it, and in some cases, wire underneath so they can't dig under, because the dogs don't know they're supposed to stay in the fence, so.
yeah. We will most certainly, without a doubt, work on the other lease, because I don't think there's any intention of anybody in the city to ever not renew that. And then, like I said, I think my direction is that we go back to the table, sit down, hammer out this memorandum of understanding, and
Thank
see
you.
what, you're welcome, sir, and see what that looks like, and obviously, some input from the city attorney. I mean, you know, it's not insurmountable. I'm not telling you that. I'm
Right.
just telling you this is something we need to get into the ditches and work out what this partnership looks like and go from there. And we have already. I mean, we've kind of expanded. I don't want to tell on myself here. You know, we've expanded our partnership just a little bit since the last time that we've been in front of the council, and it's been the benefit of both us and them. And so I think to not have this partnership, you can quit writing. To not to not have this partnership probably would be a disservice.
She is a distraction.
Well, she's right. When I probably did something wrong, she wrote something down. So, you know, but no. So I think this partnership this needs to be reduced to something in writing that everybody's had a chance to look at. And it may even be that, I don't know that WAG has an attorney. Maybe their attorney may have to look at it.
And we really don't want Williston Community Animal Rescue to disappear either. So
We don't want it all to become WAG.
we don't want it to we don't want to lease it away. Because this group that they have, as well as the city, still has commitment to it. Whether it's fundraising or, you know, whatever you need, you still want the city involved, because the city can help you when it needs help.
Yeah,
And Williston Community Animal,
Rescue.
well, that's what we call ourselves. What do you call yourself?
Shelters.
Shelter.
Yeah.
They're,
That was the
they're Wilson
building
Community Animal
committee.
Shelter. We changed it to We Care for Wilson Community Animal Rescue. We don't want it to disappear altogether.
And the consideration not going too long, you know, I think when the first chance I got to look at Mr. Eccles' email today, you know, I think he does make it clear that he doesn't mind the partnership with WAG, but he also doesn't want and I'm going to just sidestep our responsibilities
Right.
in the bottom
Yep.
and contain control and management
That
of
the
it.
city
and-
still be responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Which,
Let me go to Mr. Stiegel, who is what I see on next.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to bring it to the council's attention. It is on airport property, so I'm not sure that you can lease it away from the city's responsibility without possibly violating some grant.
Yeah, don't
And-
want to do that.
and these are the issues that I'm talking about.
Right.
Ben and I have
That's
not
why
even
we
had
do a
this discussion.
memorandum of understanding.
yeah, my question
Mr.
was gonna
Cox.
be just that. City's still gonna own it. Are we gonna have it to where,
If WAG folds,
Nope.
it's city's property.
right, but an inspection to make sure that the building's being upheld to our standards?
Yes.
I mean, we'll still have an animal control officer who's in and out,
Right.
and that to me is good enough. You know,
Not-
whatever.
Not
the
saying
attorney
that they
puts
would
in
let
there.
it go down, but, you know.
And it's essentially an airport lease, and it's got all those airport protections, which includes inspection.
I think we could structure a document that
I think
that
you can.
hopefully everybody would be happy. And like I said, I have not even discussed this with Benton. So, you know,
He's a pushover.
I don't know, he's making faces at me back
Yeah,
there.
I just think there's work that needs to be done at the table.
Right.
And we need to come back to the table, do the work, get it through our legal, and bring it back to their
Okay.
board.
Okay, so we can say consensus is.
And
for
can I
them to go
just
to the
say,
table.
real quick,
Yes, ma'am.
and while staff and all of you guys are taking a look at this, I ask that you still also keep in mind the request of Mr. Eccles at the end.
who would like for us to retain, and if there is any way for us to do that, then we need to look at that as well.
I mean, obviously, you want us maintaining the building, that's our capital commitment. You want us paying utilities for our own building, I'd say that's a capital commitment.
Sure.
I don't have a problem for our building. And the city manager is right, you currently have Central Florida Electric, and we're not allowed to cross their lines. It's a kind of a franchise thing. We've had the CEO of Central Florida Community Electric in here for meetings already about even our new FBO. The fact that they supply electric to our current one, but we're building a new one. We had to get past him that yes, he has the old one, but we're building a new one and we're going to service it. So new is one thing, and that's how we managed to get our own shelter. But backing up and crossing their lines to replace them in a facility is a totally different matter.
It's not nice.
Yeah, they wouldn't like that a bit. Mr. Barber.
And as far as free service, there's a no free service in every ordinance for every service we have. The city itself doesn't give itself free service.
Right, we pay for our own buildings. Yes, we do. Yeah, I don't know if y'all are aware of that or not, but we actually pay whatever the meter says. Even if it's our electric, we pay it in the budget. We pay it back to the general fund.
Again, all of that's, we kind of went off the old lease, because the old lease does say that the electricity would be waived, water and sewer was supposed to be waived as well. That hasn't always happened, but it is what it is. So really what our goal is, if it was held just for the city of Williston and the dogs that are pulled from the city of Williston, you would be staffing a shelter that's empty a good portion of the time, because over the years that I've been at WAG for 6 years, we've never taken more than 10 dogs from the city of Williston in a year. So you're talking about having a facility sitting there that would only have 10 dogs in an entire year, but you're staffing it and you're paying for it. Whereas we can bring animals in from the surrounding communities to really help impact the surrounding community, which impacts your city, to help, help decrease the pet population.
I think
That's
it's a
really
great
the goal.
partnership.
Okay.
Ms. Jones.
That's not really accurate, because we had our own shelter, we had to put the dogs in, and a lot of the dogs, they're middle of the night dogs. They're, people maybe pulled over and aren't gonna go home right away, we have to hold them for a day or two, then they can pick them up, so maybe 10 dogs that were adoptable, but we hold a lot more than 10 dogs a year.
Right.
We have dog bites, we hold, we have a few of those a year, and the police call us, we have strays that come in, so, and just looking at this, we'll just need more than 2 kennels. We have 2 kennels right now, so that wasn't enough, we needed more, so we
Right.
just need a little bit more than that.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely adoptable dogs, we don't have that many, but we have a lot of dogs that need shelter for a night or two.
And I was unaware and found out, and we're very thrilled to know that y'all were we were adopting dogs, or with y'all's assistance mostly. I wouldn't realize that any of them were being neutered before they were adopted. And I was really upset that we were adopting them and not neutering them. I had no idea that y'all were helping us do that. Well, I found that out a month or so ago, and I was really happy to hear it.
I'm gonna introduce Carol soon, because I think they can use it a lot, but it tags all the dogs and cats, and if they're not neutered, they're not allowed to be adopted out.
Right.
It puts a big red thing on them, which is
Well, I knew that was the way we wanted it to be, but I didn't know it was happening that way, because nobody ever mentioned that. But then I found out that they were helping us by taking them and getting it done, and I was thrilled to see that. Do we have consensus from the council to refer it to the attorney and the city manager to bring us back an agreement?
Yep.
And they
Yes, I
can-
think we do.
they
I'd
can-
like to see multiple traps for those stray cats in Williston. Multiple traps, not a trap.
Well,
No, the
that's
people
up
that
to our
do
animal
CNR
control.
will tell you the best way to do it is if you have 10 cats in a colony, you trap all 10 in one day, and you get them all spayed
Good
and
luck
neutered,
with
and then they
that.
get returned back the following day. That's typically how it's done. Yeah.
Our cats are really smart.
Our cats are smart.
Oh, they're very good at trapping them, I promise.
I've tried everything to catch them.
Yeah.
They can come to my neighborhood because they're all over the place.
Vocal came and helped me trap 9, and they did it in less than 2 hours. They
Well, my
trapped 9
problem was that Sheltering Hands would only take 2 at a time. From even
Vocal takes a
though
lot.
we established we had a colony in that neighborhood, but
Okay.
we did get it done. All right, so we're going to refer it to y'all
TNR
and the
is
WAG
trap,
board.
neuter, release. Yeah, which neuters for the male, straight, but same idea. Obviously, the males are more important to get neutered because they can impregnate
Hey.
lots of females. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys. Well, you know, female can only have one litter at a time. The male can create many, many litters at a
Yeah.
time. So, yeah. But yes, we do the females as well.
Okay. I'll bring it back to us when you get it where you want it.
All right. Thank
All
you
right,
so
thank
much.
you.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Item 5B, presentation and discussion with possible action. Hector Savario with Performance Services. Good evening. Yep,
Just give it a minute.
yep.
Well, good evening, everyone, Madam President, council members, Mr. Mayor, and I don't think you're worthless, by the way. I think you do a lot of good work, so, but I'll never argue with your wife. Mr. Manager, City Attorney, and City Clerk, and staff members in the audience, thank you for having me here tonight, and hope everybody had a wonderful holiday break, wonderful New Year's. My son was able to come down, take leave from the Navy, come and visit, and my daughter was able to come up, so it was wonderful to see them.
Wonderful.
Always makes for a special holiday. Before I begin the presentation, I want to point out that tonight you have two agenda items that appear to be similar, but are in fact very different. And that's this item, item B, and item M, later down in the agenda. Now, the similarity that you're going to hear, and why I point this out, is because both of them have the AMI, Advanced Metering Infrastructure component, to talk about meters and electric, water, and gas meters, and the network to communicate with them. So that's going to be the similarity, but in fact, they're very different in many ways. Item M is fairly singular in its focus. It is about AMI and an AMI program. This item that we're going to be talking about today includes an AMI program, and that's the similarity, and that's why I wanted to bring this up now. But what we're looking at is, and what I've shared with staff and with the administration here, is that this is more about improving operational efficiencies at the city and doing that in a cost-effective manner. It's comprehensive, and that's where there are some real differences. This is comprehensive. It includes AMI, but it really is about many other things. In fact, I'll point out some differences just to put them on the table. This item is guided through the Florida statute on performance-based contracting. This item brings funding to the table. It provides the funds to pay for the entire project. This item provides you with performance guarantees, and that's very important. Performance guarantees for both the technical and financial components of the project. And this is not just simply factory warranties. It is true performance guarantees as required by that statute. This item provides you with firm fixed pricing, and that's important. When we get done with the engineering, with the design, and provide that price, there are no change orders. We don't change anything along the way. We don't find things that, that should have been looked at before, and therefore we got to add price and cost. We don't nickel and dime. This is firm fixed pricing. If there's something that we missed along the way, and we have to spend more money to do that, to do the repairs or resolve the issue, that's on us. We eat those costs, and that's what firm fixed pricing is about. Annual performance evaluations. If we're going to guarantee things, we want to measure that. We want to measure that performance every year, and that's also required by the statute. International protocols for how you go about testing your meters. Very, very important, and I'll talk to that. This item is about looking at multiple options, multiple technologies, multiple services, not just one, but looking at multiple options and bringing those options back to you to determine which is the best fit for the city of Williston, which one is the best fit technically and financially. So we're looking at multiple options. Now, this sounds rather simple, but even the marketing and communication plan is a difference. And if you're going to provide your residents and your businesses with the tools through this new technology, AMI, but if you're not going to instruct them and teach them how to use that, there's going to be a lot of frustration. So not only communicating what you're doing, but explaining how to use those tools is all part of that marketing and communication plan. Last thing that I want to highlight as a difference is that you're going to hear me use the word tax exempt lease purchase, because that's the funding mechanism that is used. So you hear that word lease, but this is in no way a lease. This ownership, this isn't a maintenance program, this isn't a service program. Through the legislation, everything we do, everything that we install is owned by the city. So I want to make sure there's no confusion on that. And let me stress one more difference, and that is that everything that the item M promotes or talks about as that AMI program, everything there can be included in item B in this item. Everything that wants to be done with item M, we can do. Now, the reverse is not the same. Because we're comprehensive, they're not, that item M is just not considering comprehensive. They're looking at one thing, and we're looking at many things. But I wanted to share that with you because you're going to hear AMI, and I wanted to make sure that you knew that there was a difference in both the approach and how we look at this. So I'm here to talk about this particular item and to request the next step, which would be a request for qualifications or a piggyback, depending on your city attorney, for moving to the next step, which is an investment grade audit, again, under that Florida statute. So I'll get started, and please interrupt me at any point along the way. Ask me questions. I would love for this to be interactive. So as I go through this, please interrupt me. This is the agenda. I've already touched on number one, that this is about either a piggyback or a RFQ, but I'll be touching on that legislation briefly, on those capital projects, including AMI, that have that self-funding or return on investment. That's very important. I'll be touching on the funding components and then closing discussion. Next slide, please. So this is the legislation, and I have it highlighted in red, and you should have in your package exactly, in fact, the title of the legislation. It's Guaranteed Energy, Water, and Wastewater Performance Savings Contracting. Again, it's performance-based. And next slide. If there's anything that we do that does not marry up, I say performance-based, if we miss something along the way, whether it's in year 1 or year 10, it doesn't matter when it occurs. If we miss anything along the way, the legislation is very clear that any shortfalls of anything that's guaranteed are my responsibilities, are the contractor's liability. And so if we say you're going to save $100,000 or $500,000, and you don't do that, if you only save $400,000, it's on us. We're required to write you a check for that $100,000 shortfall as part of the agreement. So that's how a performance-based contract works, and that's what we're talking about here today. Next slide, please. Other things about the legislation. Very first bullet is probably the most important. We're bringing funding to the table for the project, but the legislation is very clear that the funding shall not constitute debt, liability, or an obligation on the city. There's an annual appropriations, and that's important because you don't want what you're doing here today, if it's going to be, whether it's $1 million or $10 million project, you don't want that to impact your ability to take out debt if you wanted to, or you don't want it to impact your ability to issue a bond. This is a neutral project, and that's why it doesn't have that impact, but I will always defer to your CFO to make that final determination. I talked about most of these here, but that last bullet at the bottom, open book pricing. We provide open book pricing because we want you to know, we want your staff to be able to look at our numbers, look at what we're charging, look at what it's costing, look at our profit, look at our overhead, and make sure that it's in line with industry. So we provide that open book pricing. Next slide. I talk about capital projects that have a return on investment, and these are just 4 examples, and you can look at these, but the most important part that point that I want to make is if you look at the city of Jacksonville, the first gray box, top left, you see it's got a cost of, I can't even see it from here, I should need better glasses, but it's got a cost of, I think, $5.6 million. 2 boxes to the right of that, the return on that project, it netted, I think it's $9.6 million in savings and revenues for the city. Cost of the project was 5.6, it netted 9.6. So when we look and when we talk about your project, that's what I'm talking about. Making improvements, operational improvements that generate generate revenues and savings that will either match or exceed your cost. City of Waxahachie, 9.4, $13 million return. Lufkin, 16.6, thank you for the old guy. 33 million. Henderson, again, you see the numbers there. 4.3 was the cost of the project. The net was 9.3. And when I show you our preliminary numbers for your project, you see that they're similar. Next slide, please. So these are the 5 stages of performance contracting. We have done the preliminary assessment. Moving forward through the RFQ or piggyback, that's when you get into the remaining components, the audit, implementation, measurement verification, and annual savings report. And by the way, those last 2 are required as part of a performance contract because, again, it's performance-based. But we've done the preliminary assessment, and I'm going to share with you preliminary project economics. And I'm going to talk about that because that's very important that it's a clear understanding of what we're doing in the preliminary stage, which we completed and shared with staff in a workshop on November 1st. Next slide, please. So when we looked at projects in the preliminary assessment, we looked at a great many things. We looked at various parts of your utility, from water meters, lift stations, SCADA. We looked at various things, wastewater expansions. We looked at expanding the internet. We looked at maybe some solid waste efficiencies. So again, through the legislation, we are looking at a city from a comprehensive perspective. The scope today, and what I'm going to be talking about, has been reduced based on priorities we've heard from staff. And so I'm going to be talking about AMI and meters. I'm going to be talking about leak detection and pressure monitoring, and then the water mains. So that scope has been narrowed to focus on the water loss and how to reduce water loss in the city, as you know, and we'll talk about the water loss here. Next slide, please. So again, the preliminary project economics. These are not, this is not pricing. It's not intended to be pricing. It's intended to give us a feel for what we can do. When we start looking at and assessing different options, and we assessed 5 options here during the preliminary assessment, the 5 options, we looked at the pricing and services. We looked at a great many things. And because we're never sure of what the city may opt for with features and benefits, we go to the high side. We take the Cadillac version of the pricing we get in case the city wants all the bells and whistles. This isn't the Chevrolet, this isn't the Ford, this isn't the most cost effective, but we wanted to see from our perspective, does this thing make financial sense? If the city wanted a Cadillac, does it make financial sense? And you can see down at the bottom right corner, 5.1 years of a simple payback is far greater than the statute, which requires it has to be under 20 years. 5.1 is a very impressive payback when you've got infrastructure that's going to last you 20 years. But again, these are just preliminary numbers that we use at this stage to see if it makes sense, not final numbers. I wanted to stress that. Next slide, please. A lot of numbers here, don't worry about them all, but what I wanted to add is that not only do we take a look at the cost, we take a look at the impacts to your budget. Column 7 up there, if you can see it, is what's the annual service requirements that this is going to place on the city? Because if that is an exorbitant number, and it can have a real impact on the project. So item 7, we included those numbers, those estimates on what it's going to cost annually. And at the column 11, the 2 yellow ones, at the end of 10 years, it still netted the city $2.6 million positive. That's what it netted. After 15 years, it was $6.3 million, if I can see that correctly. So that's what was of interest to us, and that's where the preliminary comes into play. Does this make good financial and technical sense? And that's what we have determined through the preliminary. Next slide, please. So this is when we talk about the scope that we're requesting to move forward with. It's this. It's the 3 things you see there at the bottom: water meters, AMI, system-wide pressure and leak detection system, and upgrades to the water mains. The reason for that, for those 3 items, is because the issue, and I'm going to talk about water meters, but this applies to electric meters and gas meters. A lot of the same things apply. So when you've got 25% water loss and industry standard should be closer to 10, that means that you're pumping water out of the ground, you're pulling water, you're treating it, you're pumping it out, and you're paying for all of that, but you're just not receiving the revenues for that. And we're estimating there in yellow that the impact it's having is that about $500,000 in revenue that's not being collected by the city. I'm going to pause there just for questions, thoughts, anything at all on what the direction we're taking.
So Hector, on these numbers here, so the annual debt service, the 835, 331, we went with this plan here, that would be my annual cost to pay that every year.
Again, this was a Cadillac version?
Yep.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So again, we're looking for things that are self-funding, and we shared all the numbers with you. We went through these very thoroughly with staff to see what made sense, to make sure that we're using valid numbers. Again, Terry, we went through this, and when we get into the investment grade audit, we're going to be doing a lot of the same thing. Very thorough, very transparent to make sure that numbers make sense. You can move on to the next slide. I'm going to try to, I know there's a lot here, and I'm going to try to speed up. Terry, I'm going to hold you responsible for this because you asked me to include all the slides that I shared with you.
Yeah, I wondered too myself. There's
Yeah,
like 40
so-
some odd of them.
I think there's 30-something slides.
Yeah,
So I can pause and jump to the end anytime you want.
No, you're good. Keep going.
So when we talk about, again, why the scope? Why not just AMI? Why not just water meters? When you look at and this is a table that I know everybody just absolutely hates. I hate this table. But what's important about this table is it comes out of the American Water Works Association M36 manual on water audits and loss control programs. And when they talk about water loss, it's not just meters. There's water loss, and I put 25% for you, and I look at the far right column, non-revenue water. So that 25%, you're not collecting on. It's costing you money, but you're not collecting on that money. And the reason is that apparent losses and real losses. Apparent losses are your meters. Your inaccurate meters, it's data errors, it's the meter side. The real losses are your pipes, your tanks, your transmission system. So if you want to get that 25% water loss down, you've got to address them both. And that's why when we focus on water loss, not AMI, but water loss, we're looking at all of this. And that's how we approach it. Next slide. So when we, this is just a high level, the development, the RFQ or the piggyback to do number one, move into number two, number three. Number one is just the engineering and design for the three elements. Number two is implementation. And number three is the monitoring and the guarantee component. When you get into leak detection and pressure monitoring those things long-term, year after year, day after day, is going to be important for future reduction in some of the issues you may be having. Next slide. So this is AMI. I think we all understand AMI. So you can move to the next slide. You put in new state-of-the-art meters, and they're able to communicate. But what's important to understand, and this is for an AMI program, it's not just put a meter in the ground, put up some antennas, and you're good to go. There's so much more to it. At least when we do it, it's so much more to it. You can see all the field surveys, all the different things that are included here, but the four things at the bottom, the database analytics, meter testing, market, I'm going to touch on those. I'm going to try to do this quickly. But just understand that database analysis is critical, a critical first step. You have to understand, I mean, you get about 4,000 accounts. We're going to be looking at 4,000 accounts that are charged every month, so that's 12 months. And over the last 3 years, you're talking about almost 145,000 line items of data that has to be looked at. And when you look at each line item that's got a meter size, a meter number, a consumption, serial numbers, all the data that's included in that one line, you're talking about scrubbing about 1 million different points, data points, to make sure that the data is correct. If you're going to establish a baseline, you better make sure your data is correct. And that's a very important part. You can go to the next slide. Meter testing, again, very, very important. There are protocols for meter testing. The International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocols say, how confident do you want to be that the results of your meter tests are correct? So they establish a 90-10 percentages. It could be higher, it could be lower, but that's what they recommend and propose for this at this stage. And you can see how many meters need to be tested based on their recommendation. 251 meters, that's my initial estimate. It actually may be higher when we start breaking down the different size meter categories. So that's a lot of meters that need to be tested. You can't just do 5 or 10 or 20 and have any confidence that what your revenues are going to be. It really needs to be per those international protocols to make sure you're testing the right number. Now you have a little more confidence of what your revenues are going to be. Next slide. Marketing, asset marketing, whether it's door hangers, additions to your website, flyers, bill inserts. We have a marketing team that to support you in how you want to communicate to your residents, but also town hall meetings, videos, whatever you think you may need. We'll be working with your staff on that marketing plan to make sure that when this is getting rolled out, they know. They're going to see our shirts. They're going to know that we're out there. They're going to know how to use the system when they get that system. We're going to make sure there's no frustration on anybody's part. Next slide. The portals or the tools that are available to them, as you can see, there's a lot there, but on the customer side, the tools to manage consumption, the tools to manage their budget, very, very important. The alerts for leaks, for being over budget, being over consumption, very important, especially in light of the fact that you've had to raise rates recently. Providing them the tools to manage their budgets and set alerts will be very important to them. So again, that's part of the portals that we're providing. Next slide. On the installation side, it's not just installing the meters, it's looking at lead and copper surveys, it's doing GPS coordinates for everything that's installed, it's assessing and replacing meter boxes and lids as needed, it's having a 24/7 response phone number available to staff, it's having an IT specialist available to oversee the data transfer. It's all of it. So there's a lot of components that it's not just changing out a meter. Next slide. Absolutely, please do. I'm getting tired up here, so. And if I'm getting tired.
Then you know she's listening, right?
If we go back to slide 36, it's talking about customer and utility portal. The customer will be able to go in to a portal and take a look and see how much consumption they've had
Yes, ma'am.
with all accuracy.
They can do it on their phone with an app. Yeah. And they can not only do that, but if they want to budget $50 for the month, they can send an alert to when I get to $25, let me know. And if I get to $25 in the first 3 days, I know I'm in trouble. But if it's in the last latter part of the month, then they'll know they're okay. So they'll know if they got to start, better managing their usage, and also they'll figure out do I have a leak somewhere. And that's the other beauty of the system, and we can get into that if you'd like. Yes, Mayor.
Are we gonna start using their mics again? Even though they don't work? I love working with things that don't work,
Do I need
Aaron.
to repeat?
So my question is real simple. When you put these new meters in, they clearly are much more expensive than the old ones. Are they all going to be locked?
That would be entirely up to you, up to the city.
My question is self-centered. A lot of people don't have cutoff after the meter, and they have to go to the meter to turn their water off. Is that still going to be possible with these meters? I'm seeing somebody back there saying, answering for you.
Mr. Mayor, current ordinance, that's illegal. That's a fine. There's no reason that a customer or resident can go into their meter at city property for any reason at any time.
After the meter.
After the meter, they're welcome to have a customer side shut off. The ordinance actually says they're required to have a customer side cut off.
And that's what I'm asking about.
But if they don't, they still cannot go in. They have to contact after hours, and after hours or during the day have to be the one to access the meter.
Okay, Mr. Barber, I'm clearly not being accurate enough for you, so I'm going to try again. In the meter box, the after meter cutoff is quite often in that meter box.
No, sir.
It's in the yard.
Okay, if you're sure, because I thought that mine was in the meter box.
If it's in the box, it belongs to the city. If it's outside the box,
After
it
the
belongs
meter.
to the customer. Even if it's after the meter, if it's inside that box, it belongs to the city.
How interesting.
Yes, sir.
So I have to contact the city if I want to cut my water off because it's leaking in the house.
Well, yes, sir, unless you have
Okay.
a cutoff at your side.
Which I do, but not everybody does.
I understand that.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
So as boxes get converted, is this something that a valve can be installed?
Absolutely. If that's part of the scope that you want included, we can do that.
That's a totally different issue. Yeah.
Yes. I
Totally
just
different
was
issue.
wanting clarification on ability.
And I can tell you, I don't have a cutoff on my side of my house, but I have a pop-off valve that I can open that stops it. It runs in the yard instead of into the house.
I've had people call me about this very issue.
Yeah.
That's the reason I brought it up.
Yeah, they can't go in the meter box at all. The meter can.
And some of us don't know the difference.
Yeah.
Yep.
Saying.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. And next after that. So that was the AMI, the meter side. That was the apparent water losses. The real losses are in your pipes, and so you've got new pipes here that were presented to you at $4.5 million of new pipes needed. We are, again, looking at what can we fund with existing pipes or problematic pipes. We don't know if it's $2 million or $1 million. We don't know what is needed today. We'll be certainly working with Walt and Wright Pierce and with your staff to identify, maybe you only need $500,000, maybe you need $3 million. We'll figure that out as we move forward. But the point here is that water loss at the pipes are real and need to be addressed as well. That's why I say this is comprehensive. Next slide. Leak detection and pressure monitoring, your staff knows this very, very well. Leak detection, very important that you include that as part of the AMI project because you want to know where those leaks are occurring, whether it's a small, medium, a moderate, or high leak, or excessive leak. You want to know because you want to start to identify problem areas and which pipes really need to be changed. Pressure monitoring is another thing that needs to be done, but on the leak side, if you have a leak in your pipe, you want to know, do I need to fix it? It sounds crazy, but sometimes the leaks aren't big, and the cost to repair a line can be excessive. So some leaks you can live with, and you want to know that. I got a leak, but I can live with that one. Others are excessive, and you got to fix them because they're just costing you too much. So that's why these leak detection and pressure monitoring are important. On the pressure side, provide you a lot of data analytics, including potentially to do some hydraulic efficiencies through your pumps. And we would work with Wright Pierce to make sure that that makes sense. Next slide. You can skip this. So this is just a copy of what an annual performance evaluation would look like. So let's get into funding. The most common funding mechanism is a tax-exempt lease purchase. And again, I think I mentioned this earlier, that it shall not constitute debt, liability, or an obligation on the part of the city. I've touched on this already. It's got the guarantees, and we bring funding to the table. Next slide. How this works in a very simplistic way is that we find and we look for the best financing for the city. Well, you can find it. We can go to Seacoast. We can go to Bank of America. We look for different offers, and we look for the best terms and for the financing. But how it's going to look, I'm going to use $5 million as a round number. $5 million, this financing firm is going to put $5 million into a city-controlled escrow account. That is what is used to pay for the project. So as we go through the construction, we're like any other contractor. We're not getting paid on the money. We're not making money on the money. We're going to get paid progress payments like any other contractor. So we do the work. We do a meter. We do an upgrade. We do a line. We get paid for that work. The difference comes in number 3 and number 4. Number 3 is that as we're doing this work, these are improvements, efficiencies. So you start putting in a brand new meter that's going to be accurate, you're going to start seeing an increase in revenues. You start doing things that are going to generate savings, you're going to start realizing those savings through construction. The nice thing is that there are no payment obligations due until after all the construction is done. After everything is completed, everything is installed, and you are realizing those savings, all the savings and all the revenues as a result of that project, that's when those payments begin. Or you can defer those payments for a year or maybe up to 2 years should you want to do other things with that money, reserves, improve your reserves, capital project, whatever it may be. That would be an option. But I wanted to show that's how that funding mechanism works. And that reminds me of a presentation you had by Jody, Hinckley or Finkley, anyway, Jody, about capitalization, how you can install a project today and have it paid for by the users over time. Next slide. Conclusion. Let me ask you a question. This is an honest question. This book is one of the best sellers, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, very, very popular in 2023. It still is. This is a book that analyzed over 16,000 projects in over 163 countries. Over 16,000 projects. Of that many projects, how many do you think came in, I'll say it the other way, on budget, on schedule, and providing all the benefits that it promised to provide. Ballpark, give me a guess.
None.
You're pretty
10%.
pretty close.
10%.
0.5%.
0.5.
So, next slide. 0.5%. 99.5% of the projects missed the mark on all three of these areas. And what they found in this book, and this is what made it so popular, is that there was a lack of an understanding of what the goal of the project was and why. And that's one of the things that if you ask almost most of the people in our company, we kind of understand this book. We've all digested it. We all understand it. Next slide. It's a very important concept, understanding the goal, understanding the objectives for the project, and not losing sight of that. 10 rules of thumb from this book. The very first one is the one I want to talk to. Think slow, act fast, and it's best summarized by this quote by Abraham Lincoln. I'm sure most of you have heard that quote before. If I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend 6 hours sharpening the axe. That's the essence of what we try to do through the company and through performance contracting. That's why when you talk about the preliminary assessment, that's that sharpening the axe stage. You can go to the next slide. It's understanding what is needed, what the challenges are in the project in the city, and before you move forward and start doing things, make sure you understand the goals and the why, and we have done that. This is our team. You got Ron Russell and Ryan Quigley here. Ron Russell is one of our senior project developers. Ryan, you raise your hand there, Ryan. Some of you have met him. He's our national water and wastewater specialist. Next slide. Our team today, just today, has this level of experience, 67 projects. You can see the volume, you can see the number of meters installed. When I put together our final team for this project, those numbers are either going to double or triple when I put together the final team. Next slide. And I'll skip this one and you can go to the end. This is where we are today, just getting that approval. Again, I'm open to questions, and I'm sorry I took longer than Latricia probably wanted me to. But I appreciate your time, and again, open to answer any questions.
What's the timeline from start to finish?
When we get started with the investment grade audit, which would be the next stage, it'll take us no more than 4 months to do the investment grade audit. For the installation of everything, depending on the meter types you want, so long as many of them are available, some of them have delays, but I would say that 12 months to get this thing done is what we could do. The water mains may be an issue. Again, we have to work with right peers to make sure that the water mains that are selected are not, are reasonable. But for this type of project, I would say completion from beginning, once we start construction to the end of construction would be no more than 12 months. So by the middle of next year, this program should be up and running.
Additional questions?
I like the aspect of the training with our customers, as far as being able to go out, rather through town halls or putting the things out there, because it would be a big change, one, I think, for the better, looking over everything. I like what you'll be able to do with the app by knowing where your water consumption is for the month. And like you said, if you want to do, want to budget $50, then $25 into it alerts you. But education is going to be, I think, important. Big time.
It makes a big difference when they see us in the yard and they know why we're there. And when they know how to use the apps, it makes a big difference on how many people use it and how many are able to use that to conserve water and to manage their budgets. Absolutely. So you're right.
And I like the way that it is guided by state statute, and I like the way that it brings funding sources. Those are the two important things to me. Because y'all are governed by the state statute.
Yes, ma'am.
That assures us that it will be done as it needs to be done. You also secure the funding source. We would have to accept it. Obviously, we would have to choose the one that worked for us. But other than that, I don't know what our funding source would be.
Which brings me
We'd be
to-
looking for the last 10 years for that funding source.
So, and this will be the same question, same response maybe, or comment that I'm gonna make on M too, so we can just slide it over to M, is that, you know, my biggest concern when I asked, not a concern, Hector gave me the number, I mean, it's $69,610.91 a month is what my bill's gonna be for this project.
Right. What your payment's gonna
That's
be
my
each
payment's
month.
gonna be. So, and I know we just raised rates and we're sorting out the issues of what we're getting. And for the first couple of years, I know Stephen's online and I don't expect him to comment because we've had this conversation, is that we're making gains on our budget, which is something that we want to do. You know, but, you know, and I think it's a great project, you know, but I would like to see, you know, 4 months of data, 5 months of data, that I know that money is coming in, not with what Hector's talking about doing, but that I know that I'll have that money to pay this bill if this doesn't work out.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because I know that we talk about it not being a debt, but it is still, I mean, it may not be registered as a debt, but it is still somebody I'm owing money to.
Sure.
And 69,000, and I know that's just a rough figure and it will probably go down, is a lot of money. And I was figuring like 32,000 on another AMI project, you know, that we were about to pay monthly. So we have to consider that. And the only thing that I would ask is that I too like 489. I think it holds some certain standards up there. There's the issues of competitiveness of whether or not we would even have to put out for bid the competition of the audit. That's a discussion that we've been having. And so where other companies could come in and do what he's talking about doing, or even if they would. I don't even know if we would get one person other than Hector's group to do this. You know, I've mentioned before in a conversation myself and Hector, obviously there is one other company because they were here earlier and, you know, that's how we got to meet Hector. So, you know, but that's the only thing I would say is that, you know, as we consider this project and as we consider project number N and as we start moving forward, I want to make sure that we have the money in the bank to pay for this in case it doesn't happen or if it doesn't work out, or if, say, if it's a net zero gain, then that's fine. You know, and I understand there's a state statute that requires their business to pay us, you know, but I still, I don't know much about their business. I don't know, you know, if you would have told me that I could not go buy a Pontiac today, I would have laughed at you, or an Oldsmobile, or go to Sears, or go to Kmart.
Yeah.
And y'all have heard me say this
Right.
several times, that's the way I feel when it comes to paying this money. So, and I don't know, Stephen there? You know, so that's the only thing I would say is that I would feel more comfortable knowing I have the cash flow. I don't have a question. I just nobody wanted to make a comment. I also got two other big projects coming up. I got the Heritage Park, John Henry, not Heritage Park, coming up.
Stormwater project.
Stormwater project, and I got Block 12 coming up. Now that's CRA money. I got a whole bunch of gas on here, you know, that we worked with Stephen to put them in the right spot for thing. I may love this project the way it goes. I may say this will be the best way to go. I just understand my concern of not having that monthly payment.
You're saying you'd like to have 6 months worth of revenue in the bank before
Well, I
you.
would like to have just data from Stephen to where, because it stands right now where Donald, and we've done Florida Rural Water, we've done all of our numbers and stuff like that. They've done all the math, and the math looks really good, and that we'll have the money in the bank to do, not in the bank, we'll have the money monthly to do AMI with our rate increases, but I don't know that for sure. And Stephen has not told me that for sure. I mean, these rates just started last month, this month.
Isn't
this month?
Well, he did mention that we could actually postpone payments for a year or two. Now, what interest would be accruing on
Yes,
not
interest would
making
accrue, yeah.
payments?
So you would look at what's
So
the
then
interest.
it increases the amount that we have to pay back as well.
So you would look at the, you know, is it worth 1 year delay, 6 month delay, 2 year delay? Because you would want to look at your interest payments, and how much that climbs versus how much you're going to make on the delay and the revenues and savings.
Okay,
But I want to address what Terry said, and this is important. Again, I think you know me well enough, Terry, that I'm not going to make up numbers or do anything that's excessive. In fact, I was high on the, I think I was high on the price, and I was low on the revenues. So I'm confident that with your rate increases, this is going to actually produce more savings and more revenues than I even looked at. So that's one point I want to make. The other point I want to make is that you've got old meters, and these old meters have degraded, and that's why there's a potential for a revenue increase, because the meters have degraded. That degradation isn't going to stop today. That degradation is going to continue. So you can say, well, I don't really want to do this. I don't know if I should. Know that as that degradation occurs, that you may, in another 2-3 years, find yourself in that same position because you've lost that revenue due to that degradation, and saying to yourself, I got to raise rates again. So not only do you capture that inaccuracies and that revenue today, but you stop that degradation with an AMI program. So I use $500,000, which was conservative, of what the potential revenue gain might be. Think of it as I'm losing $500,000 a year right now. So do I want to do this project? Well, yeah, because
that's the kind of the way I'm looking at it too. It's not only, this is not just meters. This is new water lines and it's new water mains. I'm seeing that in your project as well. And we all know with the issues we've had lately, every time one breaks, another one breaks, and another one breaks. I mean, y'all have taught me enough to know that that's an issue. And we can put in a new meter, but if we don't fix the lines and the mains, we're still in the same shape just with new meters. So we kind of have to wrap it all up together and do it. I mean, not that I want to go out and spend $4 million or $5 million, but we've got to make some improvements somehow, and we've got to get the money somewhere.
Here's my question, and I think this is piggybacking off of the manager. I mean, we don't know where we're at with the rate increases we just had. We don't know. I mean, who's to say in a year or 2 years from now that we're not plugging away at these ourselves? It might be a question, something that you know better, Mr. Barber or Bishop, which he's not here. But, with the amount of money that we're going to have coming in from the rate increases that we haven't had, is this something that over the course of the same 4, 5, 6 years that we're plugging along and we're doing ourselves as well without the expense or the interest and everything? So I don't know. I think that's what you was getting at, is we don't know the data yet on the money that we've got coming in just yet. I mean, or what it's going to cost in the future. You probably know that better than anybody, I would think. I'm just kind of brainstorming.
And I do see Mr. Barber's hand, if you'd like to chime in.
I was wondering if council wouldn't mind if we could switch to M&M, this would be an appropriate time to talk about it.
Yeah, I think
We have facts, we have information about M that would be helpful.
Does anybody have a problem with moving M up? And we can discuss it now and then go back and talk about both of them at the same time. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay.
Terry, did you want to start, or did you want me to?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, so the reason why M was put in there is because staff has heard 7 AMI presentations by 7 different companies. And granted, there's vast differences in all these presentations and what are provided. Some companies can do some things, some companies can't do hardly anything, some of them do a lot of things. The reason why staff is promoting an RFP is because regardless of who we go with, it has to be, I believe, through the city attorney. It has to be through a competitive process. So we just wanted to show council what the options were. So M for staff is an opportunity to basically look at all the research we've done, all the things that we know that we need to address within our system because we work with it every day. And just to kind of give you a cheat sheet, if you go to page 158 in your packet, it's the 12th page in the RFP. There are a list of 11 things that we as a staff have recognized through Wright Pierce, through Florida Rural Water, through all these other partners that we have as things that staff would like to promote within whoever comes across and says we can provide these services. These are what are important to staff when we look at these issues. Some of them overlap a lot with what the presentation given was. Then you'll see at the very end of the and we'll go through those in just a moment. But if you look at the very end of it, it's on a page 169, in Exhibit A. You're going to see this is our water meter replacement project scoring criteria.
And this is so we can actually score. So you'll have all the RFPs, or maybe only one or two come in, and it would give council and staff an opportunity to say, okay, we know what our needs are, and here's a scoring sheet to see how they compare to what we have identified that we need. And that's why we propose this. Again, I agree with Terry wholeheartedly. We need the data. I mean, people can come in here, Florida River Water, everybody can come in here and say, we believe this is what you'll make. We believe this is how much will be left over of the rate structure. But until Stephen comes in and says, yeah, in fact, that's what it is, that's 100% correct. We need to be careful on the timing of this. But again, you know, if council wants to consider this M, then we could put it out, see who comes back. This gives us all the time to get the feedback. And again, if you go to page 158, we need removal of all existing meters. We need supply and install of new meters for gas, water, and electric. Some companies cannot do all three services. Staff would highly recommend against going with any company that can't provide three services for which we provide. We looked at many companies. Most of them are what they call turnkey. They build it, and then they say, see ya, and best of luck. We don't have the staffing structure like large cities like Gainesville, Ocala. They have entire divisions of AMI personnel. It's their full-time jobs. We're not going to ever be in that place, so we need people who are going to partner with us to do asset management. We want to go to an Aclara. It's technical terms, but there are certain types of technology. There's different types. We've identified that the Aclara is the system that you want to be compatible with, working with IT and everyone else. We want a single point of all responsibility for all components, no third party or subcontractors. We want to make sure that they will secure the full service program. Again, that goes back to Terry's point of you have no idea who's going to go belly up. You want one point to go to. We don't want to have to go contract with water for water, and IT for IT, and sewer and gas for gas and whatnot. Then, of course, the malware and security coverage was a big point. There's an escalating factor of cities that are being held hostage once they go on these AMI programs. We're turning off your system. We're holding hostage your data. You pay us in Bitcoin. I mean, that stuff occurs all the time now. Ongoing maintenance programs with field labor and AMI endpoints, offboard maintenance, full service, data hosting and delivery. We don't want to have a server here. We want it cloud-based. Prorated or replacement on meters of all equipment. And again, turnkey deployment of approximately 1,800 water, gas, and electric meters with software maintenance. So these are some of the things that staff's identified in all the presentations and all the research of things that we would ask council to consider in any proposal. And that's why we got this RFP together, to give you guys an opportunity to see what's out there and whether or not you'd even be interested in pursuing it after seeing what your options or the full scope of those options were. And so that's if you have any questions, I can try and answer them, but that was the main part.
So why can't we take that and write it into their contract? Tell them this is what we want, because they come with the state statute and the funding.
And yes,
and the water lines and the water mains.
Yes, Madam President, I understand that. What I'm saying is we've gotten direction from the attorney that no matter what council decides to do, it has to be a competitive process. So if we're going to go out on a competitive process, these are things we're looking for, and that's why we put this together.
In answer to your question, yes, everything that Donald just referenced here absolutely can be part of our project. The competitive process would be an RFQ, which we've talked about. So not trying to bypass that. You can, but you don't have to. An RFQ would be the competitive process. And I think Kirsten's already mentioned that it would have to go out for an RFQ. So being competitive, including these in a performance-based project, brings you all the guarantees and benefits. And Terry, it does provide you with the numbers at the end of that audit. An RFP, that process does not provide you the numbers. They're not going to guarantee performance.
No, they're not.
And I remember him saying in his original presentation is that he works with finance. He works with finance, and finance helps him have the numbers. That's what, because they're the ones who are going to be held for it. If we don't make the revenue they say we're going to make, they're on the hook for it.
And Madam President, we did have the discussion about rolling in what we needed into their model.
Right.
And also making it competitive, where they had to bid it.
Even under state statute, they have to bid it? Really? Okay.
So, and my question even goes back even further to, does even the audit have to be bidded? And some of the language that I see where it talks about in 489, the evaluation has to be bidded out, and that to me is an audit. So, and like I said, we may go out for the first step here, maybe to ask for people to come back like Hector, as he's done here, to come back and propose something to the city council with an RFP, whatever we're going to call it, whatever it is, I have no idea, an RFQ, and then basically give us a quote of what it would be like to do this audit. And you know what, Performance Services may be the top dog. And
Terry, just for clarity, that legislation is a design-build legislation. It's a design-build, so the audit is a design component, the build is the implementation. You can stop after the design and say, I don't want to do implementation. That's, doesn't happen often, but it can happen.
And we could do that, and I would have no problem paying that for that audit, as long as the city council understood that if we, and they do, if we stop that process and go, okay, we're not going to go, thank you very much, have a nice day, here's what we owe you for that, we retain the audit.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we get the material and all the work done on it, and we can go in our own direction however we want to go. And then, of course, then there's no coverage, there's no guarantee, there's no anything like that. We just had you do an audit, and thank you for the work done, and here's the payment for it. But that's still, my point is that that's still well above my threshold to approve, and most certainly above the 25,000 that's authorized by our purchasing policy, and over the 35,000 that's offered by the state.
Well, can we do this as option 1 and option 2
Yes.
be the water mains?
Well,
in the RFQ. I'm not trying to bypass the RFQ. I'm trying to say, can we do this, the meters alone, as option 1, and option 2 to include water mains and water lines, because we need those too.
Absolutely.
And maybe even option 3 is to give us a funding source, and you get extra points if you bring a funding source. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So does every section have to be bid on?
Not
Or
if
is
you
it
make it
bid on as
additional
one whole?
options.
It doesn't have to be. The RFQ is for a performance-based contract, performance contracting. If you look at the legislation, and I know Kirsten has, you see there's a long list of what's included in scope. So the things that you're describing are absolutely part of that, can be included in that. So you don't need to break them out. You can be specific about what you're trying to accomplish. The performance contracting legislation requires bringing that funding to the table. So you do a performance-based solicitation, an RFQ, then you're covered everything that we're talking about here. Everything that Donald has mentioned in item M would be included as. And by the way, Aclara is a great system, a great network. I think it's wonderful, especially for small communities. I think it's great. So clearly, Donald's on point. What I'm saying is that that's part of what we would assess, and we make sure that it's compatible. We'd also look at the cost and the long-term cost, just to make sure that that it makes sense. But we do that with everything, and so that would be one that we like, one we would look at. Very, very fond of that. But that's another one we would add to our assessment, so that you have options. And quite frankly, I've had cities say, Hector, I really only want you to do A, B, and C. I want this meter, I want this network. It's okay, done. I don't have to worry about anything else. And if Donna was to say, this is the network that I want Aclara, I want these types of meters, it makes it very simple, much more efficient for me.
Everybody can bid on the same type of.
And how old's your company you work for?
25 years old. We do about a half billion dollars a year in work, about 450 million, somewhere in there. We're a very flat organization, and this is important when you look at, we're not a big company, we're not a multi-billion-dollar corporation with a lot of overhead. We're done. We're very flat. Between me and the president, there's one person, so we don't have our costs. This isn't we're not talking about. I'm not here to compete on price, because we provide wonderful services. But our price structure is very, very competitive, because we just are so flat. About 200 close to 300 employees in 15 states right now.
Well, it sounds like we have to put it out for RFQ no matter what. Is that what you're telling me?
That is my recommendation. Yes.
Okay, so that's
Just
what I'm hearing.
Just to play it safe.
Yeah. Wow. The question is, do we want to include the other elements that he's brought us tonight, or not? Or is it too soon to do that?
Madam President, an RFQ for a performance-based contract, it covers everything we've talked about tonight. You don't have to separate it. You can.
And that's if we make it performance-based. I'm not sure that's what they're saying. I don't know if they're willing to tailor it that close, that specific.
Are you looking for
I'm
direct?
looking at the
That
people
would
that
be
are you?
up to you all.
We want to make it performance-based so that it brings the funding, brings the state statute requirements.
You
And-
can you have options. I mean, Donald, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is certainly one path to take, and we can go this route, like you were saying. You can simply purchase. You can go a little bit down. We don't do an audit. We don't do any of those things. We just get the materials that we need and the people to implement it, and baseline that.
We
That's
bypass
another
all this.
bypass this piece of it if that's what you choose to do. That's an option that you have. You could just get the meters and not the water lines and mains and all of those things. That's another option that you have. You all have some options. If to Hector's point, if you decide to go the route of having an audit, we can group it all into one thing. You would go with a company that does. You'd put out an RFQ and you would get this whole package from someone who
Right.
does the audit, brings in the materials, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a performance piece, is what you're talking about.
That is
Correct.
if you're gonna tie it back to Florida State Statute 489.
It's a performance-based.
Right.
So it's the
that's
guarantees, the
decision,
funding.
First decision we have to make.
Right. That's what you need to make your first sort of decision on. You could put out an RFQ, decide that you don't like any of them, decide everything's too expensive, and then go back and do an RFP for just the materials and someone to implement it, if that's what you choose to do. You could also do the reverse. You could put out the RFP and say, no, I actually want an audit, and then put it on an RFQ. You're not limited at this point to what you have to do.
Do we have any audit at all? I mean, right, Pierce has been doing some stuff for us. So, I mean, do we have any information related to all of this from you guys already? Yeah. I mean, is it already being covered? Is that part of what Wright Pierce is gonna do anyway? As we continue to
We
move
have a
forward?
lot of ongoing projects. Walt can expound on those if you wish him to. I mean, the master plan covered a lot of this. We know what lines need to be replaced. We know in studies at what time they need to be replaced and what order they need to be replaced. We actually have SRF funding that you guys already put forward this past fiscal year, this current fiscal year, this last quarter. Came before with Dennis Davis, talked about SRF funding. So we already have a lot of that moving forward. You guys gave authorization for an SRF loan application to be put forward. SRF loans is through the state. That has a lot to do with the water mains. It had to do with the lead and copper rules, some of the things that were in the presentation. We've already put in an application with Florida Rural Water. We're most likely going to get $75,000 toward that. So there's a lot of moving parts that Wright Pierce is involved in that entail a lot of these things, to answer your question specifically.
So how long is it gonna take to get it done with?
That all
the
has to
master
do with
plan?
capital. Last year, if many recall, if many of you recall, we had a big funding hosting that we did in May, where we brought in all the state and national agencies, and they are walking staff through that process. That's how we've come to a lot of the data, because we had to gather the data, the studies had to be done, Wright Pierce had to put forward the proposals to prove the need to go after some of the state and federal money. So a lot of that we are aggressively going after. I'm not trying to direct counsel. All I would say is that you really have two separate questions here. You have the performance evaluation tied to the statute, and then you have a company who offers services through a contract. I wish Kirsten were here, but a contract can have just as many restrictions on the person providing the contract if they're written into the contract.
But it only gives you meters.
No, ma'am. It covered
Yeah,
the funding.
Meters, that covered the infrastructure designed to run the thing. Like I said, we've had people walking in and out of this place several times about this AMI project. And some of them, there's only one company that I know of that can put together a project like what Hector's talking about. That's so far that I've seen, and I've seen 3 or 4 of these things. Some, like he said, will come in and go, well, we can't get a gas monitoring system. So we thank you very much. Have a nice day. So what you can't do is, there's 2 things, and I'm just going to be honest. What you can't do is you can't spend $122,000 on a project from a contract from another company that's not going to do it under 489. So, and then what you can't do is you can't get guaranteed that net return that he's talking about because we did the audit under Florida State Statute 489. And then, like I said, not saying anything negative about any company, but there's always that gamble, right? That if we do this, we go this route, and we do that, and then something happens to the company. And so we're in, and we won't be. His audit's going to show we're not. I'm just giving you the worst case scenario, is that we've actually make less money on it. People shut off their waters. They take a shower every other day. They start monitoring it. They start lowering their electric bills. We end up making the same amount of money, and now I'm in the hole every month, right? So that's the hole I need to make sure that I can dig myself out of before I would recommend we jump on a project. And that may only take 2 months or 3 months, and maybe the RFQ or whatever it is can go out in that time frame, and then we'll get it back and we'll know.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it being guaranteed, but guarantees are like everything.
Well, Terry, in this industry, replacing meters, you're not going to, any meter company that's coming in here talking to you about their projects, no one is going to promise revenue.
No, they're
guaranteed
not.
revenue.
And
no one is.
And I'll add to that nobody has. And Hector's the only one's come in here today and offered an opportunity where we could do it. I just want to make sure that we do it correctly. We do it within the scope of the law. We have a few months for me to look at the raw data, because we may come back 3 months from now and go, you know what, we got it wrong, and we're not perfect. I told you all that in a letter just recently. So, we make mistakes. And what if we came in and said, wow, we really missed the mark here, and this revenue that we thought we were going to get, we now don't have that revenue, and I'm going to live with the AMR meters, and I'm going to lose that 15% every month, until maybe 2 years from now when we can do it.
And I'm worried about putting the cart before the horse and having the top of the line AMI meters and water leaking everywhere.
Yeah, and I don't think we will.
And lines falling apart.
And Terry, you're right. You talked about the 122,000 that we included as that would be the cost of the 4 months of audit.
Mm-hmm.
But remember what the caveat there was, that again it gets back to that guarantee. If we do that audit and it turns out that we're wrong, we crunch the numbers and Terry, I did something wrong in the preliminary and this isn't self-funding. What I said to you before still applies, is that you don't owe us that 122,000. We eat that because we said in the preliminary this is going to be self-funding. And if I do that audit and it turns out that I'm wrong, I walk away, we shake hands and said I thought it was self-funding and I was wrong. Thank you so much for your time. But that's only if we're right, and it does self-fund, it does have that return on investment, and you don't move forward, that's the only time you would pay that. And if you move forward, you don't even pay it then. Again, it gets part of that money that gets put into the escrow account. So there isn't a transaction out of your pocket at any point unless you decide to walk away.
So if my recommendation to City Council was we do an RFQ for this process, that would go out over, 90 days or whatever it is, Yeah, and I'll have 3 months, 4 months worth of data. Maybe I'll feel a little more comfortable about that figure, and maybe we can come back and have something that's tangible to show you that, okay, that may make you feel better about going through, or even going through with this project. And I understand losing the money is an issue, and I understand that the 15% water loss, there's some meters that we had tested, to be honest with you, that were relatively new that just were dead, just didn't work, period. People were getting free water for, I don't know how long. Yeah, me too. So, they didn't call up and tell us that either, you know, so, we learned a lot from that testing is that, you know, it depends on how fast you turn on your water, can have an effect on what the water loss is. So there's a lot to this, a lot that I'm sure that this audit and evaluation will determine, because you got to stand by it once it's done.
We crunch the numbers hard, as you can imagine, because we're going to stand by those numbers and be liable. We're going to be sure that they're accurate. And just again, whether you do it with us or somebody else, I would share this with any city, is that your meters are inaccurate right now. I think you've already seen that.
Yep.
That's costing you money. So whether you do it with us or somebody else, fixing that leak, and I'll call it a leak, in your meters, on your meter side, not even on your pipe side, is something that you want to do at some point. You want to stop that leak because that degradation continues, and so you're going to continue to lose money. It's $500,000 a day. In a few years, it's going to be more than that. So you want to stop that leak sooner or later.
I think, Hector, my problem was that the number of meters that we looked at, that the representation of the number of the meters, we may have thought was not big. And to me, the numbers didn't come back that made me feel confident that savings or that revenue is going to be generated off the how many water meters do we have?
We have approximately 1,700.
1,700 water meters alone. I don't suspect they're going to see a lot of savings on gas, are we?
We'll see significant savings. Gas is the oldest meters we have.
So you think we'll see some on gas too?
Yes, sir.
And then, but what about electric?
Electric, we're probably about 50% old meters, 50% more
So-
modern meters.
So across the board, we'll see some better tracking of those numbers, and we'll have a more accurate number for charging the citizens. And that will bring us in more revenue, you know, but I would just like some time, and that's really all I'm asking for. And if I get that time through the RFQ, then I'm great. If we go through 489 and that's the direction y'all want to travel, I have no problem with it. I think it's a great way to go. I'm great. If we get the product that we want, then I'm great. But it still doesn't help me if at the end, you know, I'm struggling to make payroll. And I say that all the time for y'all. And I tell y'all that I'm very cautious when it comes to money. But I do that for a reason, so people get used to it.
It's okay, we like that.
You know, we're not eating. Hey, we're not eating. I'm starting to think it's a bad decision
That's a
on
good
the food right
attribute
now,
for a
so
city
we're-
manager.
We like that about
Yeah,
him, yeah.
so they asked me about food tonight, and I said no. So,
If we knew we were gonna be here all night.
yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's my fault.
Me
It's all
too.
my fault, so.
No,
But anyway,
it's not your
that's
fault.
my take on the whole thing. There's been a lot of work done on this.
All right, so let's have some discussion about what kind of RFQ we're gonna put out. Whether it's just a regular old RFQ for meters, or whether we're gonna put out a performance-based RFQ for the whole ball of wax.
I would say, just like he said, if we're gonna do it,
Performance.
let's do it. Let's just get it all, get the
Or
gas
should we do
meter.
one of each? Can we do both? Can we do a regular one, or can we do the performance-based one?
But with those meters, if they're out, we have dead meters and people are getting free stuff, and we're gonna put it off a year. That's,
It'll be a year by the time we get it done. I see a blinky light.
If I understand the question, is the question, can we do an RFP and an RFQ and see which we can?
And then make a decision so we don't have to waste time.
Cost you a little bit more money, but yes,
for
I mean, you have the cost of both of those together, but you certainly could. I mean, you reserve the right with all of your RFQs and all of your RFPs to reject all of the proposals that come before you. So,
But just for clarity, they're apples and oranges. An RFP, you're looking at a price. I'm going to take my car in, it's not running well, fix my plugs, how much do you charge? That's an RFP. My car's not running well, can you tell me, assess it, tell me what's wrong with it? Got a leak here, I got a leak there, I got, need spark plugs, a tune-up, tires.
Do you guarantee it, and can you help me pay for it?
Yeah, so that's the RFQ. So that's not a price base. You just give me the qualifications to assess my car, how much you charge. RFP is how much you change out
I
my.
just throw them both out there because I don't know how my council feels. And that's the kind of the decision we need to make. Hold on one second. That's,
I don't know about the bids, I don't know what's best. What's the money that we're talking in this? Sorry, my mic's on. What's the money that we're talking in, the difference of the two, or doing both together?
we're just putting it out to, for RFP and RFQ, they're gonna cost us the
Okay,
advertisement.
okay, I got you.
That's all those
Right.
will cost us.
So basically, right now, then, we're just talking about getting people to come and bring us bids to see how much money the two different options would be.
And do we wanna just put out an option for meters? Or do we wanna put
No.
out one for performance-based that wraps it all up together, that does the analysis and that brings the funding?
This is basically the question that you need to answer. Is your staff has put together, and we have a general idea of what we think we will need, what we think. And we put that together in a sample RFP for you. It says we need this, 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 and this. How much will you charge us to give us these things? That's your RFP. So do you want to do that? And we're going to go forward and say, we need these meters, we need water lines, we need X, Y, Z. Okay, RFP. RFQ over here is essentially what Hector is proposing, which is do an evaluation, do an audit. We go through this performance-based services statute. We do all of this that we have talked about today, which gives us a general idea of something is broken and we need it fixed. We generally know we want something that looks like AMI and all of these other things in our city. And what do you propose, bidder, that we do about that problem? And essentially, what is the cost going to be? And those are the two things that you're balancing right now. So you need to make a decision on, do you want to full on into the project, or do you want to start with the audit process and go through this performance-based services process? And it's really up to you.
So another question. If we decide to go with the performance base, how is it going to affect the master plan? Oh, sorry. If we decide to go with the performance base, how is it going to affect the master plan? Or will it?
Should feed right into it.
Yeah, I mean, we have already had conversation with the Wright peers.
I don't know. Who do I direct it at? Walt, I'm sorry.
Sorry. So if your question is in regards to the master plan, the capital improvement, we had to do this by year 5, this year 10, is that the nature of your question?
Yeah.
Okay, both proposals get you right to your master plan irregardless. As
Okay.
Kirsten was
guys
saying, I
all
believe
did.
I heard, the only difference is, do you want to operate under the statute or don't you? Staff would recommend you guys see both your options, but that's up to council. That's how I can best phrase it. But either one will get you to accomplishing your master plan regardless of which direction you take. It's just a different path, and maybe one gets you there faster than the other.
Than the other.
But keep in mind, the one that gets you faster probably is going to cost you more than the one that doesn't.
Is the return on investment going to be the same?
That would be for them to prove to us. A lot of these questions are going to be answered by the proposals you get back. You're going to get to see the great points of the presentation you heard tonight, and you'll say it's better in some areas than what you're going to see from others, or you may see that it's not as good as you see in other proposals. That's for you guys to determine. That's the reason for going out and seeing your options. All staff is asking that you guys look at all your options.
And the difference would be that we go with the RFQ with the performance-based study, is that at the end of that, after we get those proposals back and we select a vendor, and they do the work for us, and we don't go forward with that vendor, that comes at a cost.
Yes.
And currently that cost is $122,000. Not that that's a bad thing.
Which is the cost of the audit.
It's just the cost of the audit.
If
And
we
some,
decide not to do it after they do the audit, we have to pay
It's
for
the
the
only time
audit.
you would pay that.
yeah, and sometimes it's just the cost of doing business. You know, we pay for the same business through Wright Pierce, right? We pay for it differently. We pay them to provide a service to the city through a contract, and we're paying for a service. So that's all it's going to cost you. And you know what? If I had $5 million sitting in the bank, I'd say let's go 122 all day long. But I don't know that we have that. So
And that's an important question.
It is.
If you do an RFP, how are you going to pay for it? You know, that's something you want to answer up front. So if you're going to ask these people to respond, how do you pay them?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
For that 122, part of it is figuring out what meters you want to specify, like, just do an RFP, which meters, I guess AMI, we may know, but, there's all kinds of features in these, different meters.
Mm-hmm.
And also you get the testing. Testing is a big part of the price for all 3 meters. And Wright Pierce is also included in they have a part of our evaluation. So you wouldn't have that if you go straight to an RFP. What meters are you going?
Well, we're taking the risk of assuming that the additional revenue is going to be there, and I'm going to be able to make that payment. And once again, it gets for me, I want to make sure the data is there that I can make that payment for that, so that's the first thing. Am I seeing the revenue that we have factored into our rate changes that I can say, yes, we're seeing those revenues that are being generated. And so it's not real. I don't think one's going to be cheaper than the other. I think, to be honest with you, I don't know what Hector's, I understand the Cadillac version, but I think when you compare the two products, we may be $100,000 off. I don't know. I'm guessing. That's a guess.
I looked.
So I don't know.
I looked at our numbers compared to one of our competitors that offers a maintenance program, and
Mm-hmm.
almost exactly the same. Very, very little difference. I mean, in the tens of thousands of dollars, just because it's how they structure, how it was structured. But what's important is that when you talk about, and I don't know what's being offered on the other side, but if somebody offers a maintenance program and
Mm-hmm.
therefore pay for it over time, the only way I've ever seen that work is that if that ownership of those assets belongs to somebody else, not you, because you can't lease a copying machine for, and pay for it, and then suddenly think you own the copying machine. You don't. It's a lease, and it's a kind of a maintenance program. So this is a full front-on ownership by the city, everything we do. So I'm just saying, I'm just wanted to provide you that caution, is that your CFO is going to have to chime in. If you're not paying for it, but you're paying for it over time in a monthly payment, who really owns that asset? Call it whatever you want. Call it a service, call it a maintenance, call it, but under this program, you own everything that's included in the project.
Okay, so what are we doing? I'm trying to wrap this up. Are we doing one or the other, or both?
I think my personal opinion is before we pay the money for the audit, I think we need to see a couple months of revenue come in to see where we stand.
Well, it'll be 3 months before we get the bids back, so we should have it then.
So then I say we move forward with that, with the bids.
With just the performance-based, or the performance-based and the RFP for the meters only? That's the question. Or both?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Hector, the performance base that you're going to come back to is not going to be data. It's going to be, you're going to almost come back with the same presentation.
It's going to be qualifications-based.
Qualifications, this is who we are, this is the things we're saying. We may see some more of your people that you've done this for.
Yeah.
And there's no charge.
I will say that, a
There's
request
no
for
price in that
qualification
RFQ.
only gives you their qualifications, it doesn't give you price.
Yes,
A
ma'am.
request for proposal, which would be meters only, will give you a price, and people will give bids. Mr. Bartlett?
The RFP is not for meters only. It is for a full 15-year asset performance management program. It says it right there on that 100 page 58.
But is it more than meters?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's the same
IT,
system.
It's the cloud-based service. It's everything.
But it's not water lines and mains.
No, ma'am. But you're
Okay,
talking-
that's the
but
difference
not
right there.
AMI. But that's not AMI. That is
I know that.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
So the RFP is including all the performance maintenance and all of the asset management.
Of the meters.
Correct.
Only
we-
the meters.
we do
The
not
other
want
one's
any
more than
proposal
meters.
That's just meters.
Well, I realize that, but it's maintenance of meters.
Yeah, it's everything.
No, it's maintenance of the whole system. It's maintenance of the technology, and it's
Yeah.
not maintenance as
Of
in
the
repair,
meters.
It's management of that.
of the meters.
So we don't have to bring in staff to run that new division.
Yeah.
I
Now-
got you, but it
now-
doesn't bill you any water lines or anything.
And that's exactly what we
In-
included in our proposal.
In fairness to Hector,
Yeah.
the same Pontiac and Oldsmobile that we're talking to, or Kmart or Sears, cannot be here 3 years from now. So we would have a contract
Right,
with nobody,
right.
not him. I'm saying that, so just to be fair,
The other people.
the
that
other,
might be.
yeah, you can apply the same logic to the other people.
But Terry, just again, for clarity, everything that Donald just described is in our proposal.
Yes, sir, I
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so
Yes,
there
it is.
isn't anything, again,
Yes.
everything he's just
Plus
described.
water lines, plus,
Exactly, plus the
plus
funding,
water
plus the
mains,
guarantees, plus the
which we need
technical and
desperately.
So in a
financial.
nutshell, we want a partner to help, like Donald just said, with doing, helping with maintenance of the IT, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Barber.
I'm separating the audit from AMI.
Okay.
AMI is a part of what performance evaluation is wanting to provide. All staff is asking for is for all the companies that provide an AMI management program to come in and show council what they can provide and what the cost is, with a quote, through a competitive process. The audit is a completely separate thing. We're not, if council wants to move forward with an audit and they want, and within that audit, as far as the water lines of what need to be repaired, the staff's already working on that. So it's not like if you go through just AMI, you lose out on water mains being
you
repaired.
are working on it, but there's no funding that will pay $4 million.
You guys just did a SRF loan permit, or a application, I apologize, that is moving in that direction. And it's going to actually be at the next meeting, presented by Wright Pierce.
Actually, I started to say we haven't seen it yet.
So it's on the next agenda. So again, I'm not in any way saying what performance evaluation offering is not a great service. What I'm saying is there are two different questions for staff. AMI and all of those through an RFP is simply telling all the council, here's all the companies we've seen and this is what they can offer. If council wants to also put out something for performance evaluation through the statute or through this particular means, then that is a separate question, and staff.
I think we've said that
Yes.
like 3 times. Yeah, I can't, so we haven't come to a conclusion yet.
At the city of Fort Lauderdale, under a performance contract, we brought in, as Donald just described, we brought in different vendors to do a presentation to staff under a performance contract. And they provided their wares, their features, all the, all of what they can do.
Chose what
We
they wanted.
allowed the staff to pick the one that made the most sense for them. We guided this because of our expertise, but it's all
And
done under a
it
performance
looks like
contract.
you've written that into your request for proposal already. Mr. Nickel.
Walt Nickel with Wright Pierce. Now, I'm not involved in this. Wright Pierce isn't involved in this, but there's been some comments that Terry has mentioned. Like when we do bid projects, John Henry Park, for an example, because that's ongoing right now, we require a performance bond. And that is an insurance that you get committed, you start a project, and a contractor goes under. There's an insurance policy, essentially, that will allow this to be continued. I don't know what you've got in the RFP that you're writing right now, but I would just advise you that a performance bond be included in that. And then that fear that you've brought on that can go either way can be minimized, that risk that would be in there. So I just wanted to comment on that. There's ways to minimize that as you go forward if you're going to do that. So that's all I wanted.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
And I think if you look at the legislation on performance contracting, it requires a performance bond.
Yeah, I thought it did too. Okay, let's make a decision. I know, we're right back to it again.
All right, so you're talking about making bids based on the sheet that you have made up and getting competitive bids that way, while we're waiting for the 3 or 4 months' time that we need to see where we're at. I'm for that.
Or we can put them both out at one time and not have to wait another 30 days.
At no cost, right?
Well, just the advertising cost.
I mean, advertising cost.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
yes. Okay, then let's do that.
If you want to see what's really out there, that RFP is very specific to Aclara you're going to get very limited responses. If you really wanted to see what's
Yeah,
out
I'm
there,
sure
you
it's
would want
been
to open it
tailored
up.
for what they want. I can tell that.
Yeah, so it is tailored.
Yeah.
So
But
again,
there's no reason that that can't work in the other.
right, no, everything
within
has a
the
set.
others,
We
what
can
I've been
fold that
trying
in
to
if
say all
that's,
night.
if that's staff's
If
preference.
we decide to go the other way.
I mean, I'm
We may
liking,
not.
I'm liking everything that I'm hearing. I just caution the same thing with the money. I
We
mean, I
want the
want to
data.
see where we are 4 months, 6 months from now.
I agree.
Financially, I want to see the grants that come in and see where, you know, what can we do ourselves? What can we not do ourselves? I mean, we've got departments, we've got gas, we've got a lot of stuff ourselves. I just want to see where we're at. So we can do these bids and give us some time to figure it out.
Let's do both.
I like it,
I like it too.
but I like nothing against our guys. I think our guys are great,
Yeah.
but let somebody else do it from start to finish while we got other projects we're working on.
I agree. Design construction. An RFQ, just in case we decided to go that way, and an RFP, in case we just decide to do that.
So both.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to
Both.
clarify.
That's what we,
Okay.
that's what
All
we've
right.
all agreed to.
All right.
Yes, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Now that you have your direction, we're taking a 5-minute break. Let's make it 8:45. That gives us 10 minutes. Thank you.